1960s, the martial arts community in the United States was dominated by the classical stylists. Each classical stylist seemed to take great pride in the fact that they were identified by their limitations. For the Japanese karateka, the punch became the overwhelming identification. In Taekwondo, the practitioners liked to say that they were the best in the world at kicking. The judoka was well known for the grappling range. Each practitioner seemed to have this identification with their specific range that they applied. Ask a traditional Japanese karateka how to perform a reverse punch, and he can literally take an hour showing you how to put the hand in the right position, twist the hips, focus the knuckles, perform the kiai. In these classical martial arts, there is only one way that you can perform the right technique. In the Tao, Bruce Lee tells us that we should seek the truth in combat, experience and master the truth at each range. Jeet Kune Do was developed as the antithesis to the classical method. In Jeet Kune Do, it's important to get out and kick the kicker, box the boxer, grapple the grappler. Each experience represents a partial truth in what we call the totality of the combat arena. Lee says it's important that once we master an art, to forget the carrier of the truth. Forget that art, drop it, and move along. He says that we should repose in the nothing when you can use no art as your art, that is, no way as your way. You become Jeet Kune Do. In the 20 years or so since the death of Bruce Lee, his martial art of Jeet Kune Do has been variously referred to as Bruce Lee's method of non-classical Kung Fu, as scientific street fighting, or as Jun Fan Jeet Kune Do. In this series of videotapes by Panther Productions, I'll be demonstrating my own expression of Jeet Kune Do, which I refer to as the Jun Fan kickboxing. My own instructor was Joe Louis, voted by Karate Illustrated magazine as the greatest karate fighter of all time. And in fact, when he was a student of Bruce Lee's, learning the system of Jeet Kune Do, it was not uncommon for Bruce Lee to refer to Joe as the greatest fighter of his time. Some of the theories that I talk about here include those from the Tao, from Bruce Lee's personal notes, from working with a number of students that have worked with Bruce Lee, and my own research into the field of martial arts. My name is Jerry Beasley, and I look forward to working with you in this series of videotapes. Let's begin with our Jeet Kune Do on guard position. In the on guard position, we want to do three things. We want to first of all deny access to our target. We want to prepare our weapons and prepare for our mobility. Here's how we do that. On our stance, we want to turn our body about 45 degrees away from the opponent. The knees are bent slightly, the reverse heel is off the floor. You might notice that the front knee and the reverse knee, although bent, are not bent down too low. Also, the front foot, the toes of the front foot are turned about 45 degrees away from the target. The toes of the front foot are also about in the same line as the heel of the reverse foot. Now, it's not mandatory that you have to have this exact specific position. Remember, in Jeet Kune Do, we use no way as the only way. Sometimes my stance may be wider, sometimes my stance may be shorter. But as we speak here on the camera, it's very easy to have the exact stance that we'd want to use. At some distance, it's very easy to have your hands down. When you get in fairly close to your opponent, you need to have your hands back up for protection. Remember that, one, deny access to the targets. Secondly, prepare your weapons for the confrontation. The hands are placed, the right hand out in front, elbow guarding the ribs. The reverse hand is placed in front of the chin. Now, Bruce Lee used the straight blast technique, the punching technique, and as a result, was not that concerned with the hand being back like a typical boxer would use. So our hands are placed down in front. That's not to say they have to be there, but this is our typical stance that we use. And also notice that the reverse heel is off the floor, ready for that mobility that we need in Jeet Kune Do. This time I'd like to introduce my partner, Ian Marshall. Ian is a 4th degree black belt in Tang Soo Do and American Karate. He teaches at Tech Martial Arts in Blacksburg, Virginia. Ian, if you would, demonstrate the on-guard position. And as we take our position, remember it's important to understand that spatial awareness, that separation between two fighters. At this range, I'm free to keep my hands down or put my hands up, just depending on whatever I intend to do here. But we are basically at kicking range. The minute we close in about toe-to-toe here, we have to start thinking about our hands coming up like this, because at this point we are in the punching, trapping range. And so as we take this stance, remember, this on-guard position facilitates that quick motion in and quick motion out. It also denies access to the targets, and it prepares our weapons for attack. Now, let me conclude by saying that the stance can be used in any number of different situations. That is to say that this is our basic starting position, but sometimes you'll find that your feet are a little closer, or that you have your left side out in front. In Jeet Kune Do, certainly the strong side is favored, but after 30 years of practice, both sides tend to be equally strong. So that's not to say that you can't use your left lead as well as your right lead for this. And certainly in our kickboxing applications, you'll find the need for both of them. And so, once again, to review, the knees are bent, the feet are turned away from the opponent. Deny access by turning your body, shifting away, keeping your hands up, and having that springy type of motion so that you blast in at the opponent or move back quickly out of the way. Our next section, we're going to look at the fundamentals of the basic kicks and punches in Jun Fan kickboxing. The front kick is used from our on-guard position. As we prepare for the kicking, we have to shift our weight back. As we shift our weight back, the foot is now brought into position so that it's easy to kick. The knee comes up at the same time that the foot is going out. In Jeet Kune Do, we want to be non-telegraphic. We don't want to pull the knee up, snap it out, and then pull it down in the typical karate or taekwondo fashion. Rather, we want to put both elements together. As the knee is coming up, the foot is going out as well. Okay? And the basic straight or front kick works like this. The knee comes up, we snap the kick and we pull it back quickly. Snap and pull it back quickly. Snap and pull it back quickly. You're hitting with both the ball of the foot, or if you have on hard shoes, you can actually hit with your toe. And it hurts a lot to get hit with a hard toe in a fighting situation. Okay, so the knee comes up, we snap the kick and we put it back. Snap the kick and put it back. It's also important to recognize that there are two types of speed involved here. First is arrival speed. We have to get to the target quickly. We also have a second type of speed, which we call withdrawal speed. Once we hit the target, we have to get the foot back into the floor as fast as possible. By leaving the kick out, we run the risk of having our opponent either strike the leg or capture the leg. So we want to make sure that we're pulling the leg back quickly as we do the kick. Now, I'm going to ask Ian to demonstrate the traditional type of front kick with the classical method. Ian, if you'll just take your stance, okay, and bring the knee up in a chambered position, kick out, pull it back, and sit it down. Now do that full speed. Chamber, kick, pull back, and once more. Chamber, kick, and pull back. Now you can see that although that's spectacular and certainly beautiful in terms of kata, it does not have the elements of simplicity. It certainly is telegraphic. So Ian, what we're going to do this time, instead of bringing the knee up with the foot in, we're going to bring the knee up and start moving out at the same time. Let's try that. Ready? Up and kick. Okay, and pull it back quickly. Remember the withdrawal speed as you do that. Ready? Kick. And kick. Good stamp. Good. And kick. And once more, kick. Okay, now notice that as he prepares this kick, his hands stay up. He's not telegraphing the technique by pulling the hands back and shooting the kick out. But rather, this front kick is used just to nail the opponent as quickly as possible. Thanks, Ian. There are other interpretations of this basic front kick. If we want to increase our power, we have to put the hip into the technique. In other words, as the foot comes up, the kick, we have to put the hip in. In order to increase the power of the kick, we can bring the hip into the position. We do that by bringing the knee up, and now as the foot starts going to the target, we shoot the hip forward like that. Increases our power considerably. Up and thrust and back. Up and thrust and back. Once more, the knee comes up as the foot is going up, as the hip is coming out. Up and thrust and back. We can also hit with the bottom of the heel, putting the foot out like that. We can hit with the top of the foot for a groin type of kick by letting the foot come down like that as well. Let me get Ian back in here. I'm going to show the application of those Jeet Kune Do techniques. First of all, the front kick will work like this. We can kick at the knee, a fast snapping kick. We can kick into the groin. A lot of times when we demonstrate this groin kick, we use what's called a scoop kick, the top of the instep, kicking up and back like that. Just a fast little technique. Now, it's very hard to block a technique. This moving quickly is non-telegraphic, is deceptive. For any skill that we perform, we can increase the speed, increase the power, or increase the deceptiveness of the technique. In this case, by kicking low, we've increased the speed. By pushing the hip in, we've increased the power. And also, by being non-telegraphic, it becomes much more deceptive. We can also kick to the body. We could take the same front kick and sometimes kick with the bottom of the heel. We can thrust with the bottom of the heel as we kick as well. Okay, so this front kick becomes a very powerful item as we kick to the body, to the groin, to the leg. So far we've used the front kick off the front side, but we can also increase our power for the front kick by taking it to the reverse side. In this case, I would kick with my left, or if my right side is dominant, I'll place my right side reverse like this. Sometimes, remember, in the rigors of competition or the spontaneity of self-defense, you can't be sure that your right side is forward or that your left side is forward. So we just have to kick with what we have. If your strong side is the right and it happens to be reversed, that's simply a reverse front kick. It's used like this. Once again, we bring the knee up without chambering the foot. The knee comes up at the same time the foot is going out. We pull it back quickly and down. Up and down. Now, we can increase power, and we get that power from the hips moving in by twisting a slight pivot off the front foot here. Okay, so as we come up, we can actually reach with that kick. Imagine your opponent trying to get away from you, and you're reaching after them with that front kick. Or perhaps the opponent feels very comfortable because they're at a distance that they don't feel they can be hit. By pushing the hips in, we can increase our distance with that kick. Once again, this front thrust kick comes from the reverse side. Bring the knee up, we thrust it out, pull it back, and sit it down. Up and out, back and down, up and out, back and down. And notice that the left foot pivots slightly to facilitate the hips moving in, which gives me more thrusting power with this front kick. Up and kick, pull it back. Up and kick, pull it back. And that's what we call the reverse leg front kick. Let's then look at both the front kick and the reverse front kick in training applications. Now, as we train, you can learn a certain bit of information from what we call lecture demonstration. That is, as I talk to you or demonstrate the techniques. But the next level up would be dramatization, in which you actually perform the technique yourself. Still a higher form of learning, that is, you'll get more information as you perform it, is through focus pad drills. This is what we call simulated experience. In the simulated experience, I'll have my partner, or I'll be the coach perhaps, holding the focus pad and allowing my opponent to strike it. This is how we'll do that. Ian, if you'll come in. I'll take the focus pad and place it on the hand. I'll have Ian take a fighting position, and we're just going to work with the front snap kick. Ready, and 1, and 2. Go ahead and hit a little harder. 3, and 4. All right, now notice he's using the ball of the foot as he kicks in, and it's important to pull it back quickly. Sometimes I'll have him kick, and I'll just kind of snap back at him just to make sure that he's pulling the foot back quickly. Ready, kick, and kick. Okay? We can also kick from the reverse side, if you'll change positions here. And this will be the front thrusting kick from the reverse side. Ready? And 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. And now as we perform those kicks in this simulated type of experience, it's important that we maintain a good posture, because as you practice, that's the way you're going to actually perform the technique. And now, if we are moving forward and back and practicing the kick, we have to introduce a form of stepping. This is just a step and slide. Okay? The step and slide will work like this. We'll take the foot out slightly, the front foot slightly, slide the reverse foot up, snap the kick, and then step back. Okay? Once again, on the step and slide, we're going to take a little step out, slide the reverse foot up, snap the kick, and then step back. We can also, without having that initial motion out, we can simply slide the reverse foot up, snap the kick, and then pull back. We want to be able to slide in and kick and slide back out of the way. I want to be able to slide in and kick and slide back out of the way. This is so that we can hit our opponent and then be away from the opponent so the opponent can't strike back. We slide up and kick, and we slide back out of the way. And now, Ian, let's try that technique using the focus pan. So you're just going to step and slide. Move back just a little. Okay, you're going to step out, slide up, kick, step back, quickly out of the way. Ready, step up, kick, and back. 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 Okay, that's fine. So as we train these techniques for the focus pan drills, there are any number of different drills we could put together. This simply demonstrates one of the basics that we would use in preparing the front kick, the snap kick, and the reverse front kick. Next, we'll look at some of the sparring applications for the front kick. You'll find that in actual self-defense or in sparring, the front kick becomes one of the most important kicks that you can master and perform. Ian, if I can use you for a minute. This time we're just going to move around lightly, and I'm just going to demonstrate how the front kick is used in application. As we move around, I can just fire a little snapping kick. Now that's just to gauge the distance, just to get the opponent's attention. And snap out another little kick. I can throw a front thrusting kick if I have more room, like that. I want to make sure that I'm getting my foot down. And again, it's just snapping the kick. Now if this were a self-defense situation and the opponent was coming in, bam! I have the front kick very effectively and immediate for my self-defense routine. And while the front kick is perhaps the easiest kick to perform, it's the hook kick that is most often used in Jeet Kune Do. Most systems refer to this as a round kick. It kicks around. But Bruce Lee looked at the round kick, and since it was in the same direction as the hooking punch, referred to it as the hook kick. The hook kick, once again, wants to maintain that element of being non-chambered and non-telegraphic. Most traditional karate systems, we would bring it up, pivot, snap the kick out, and then return to the floor like that. In Jeet Kune Do, we want to get out of those two steps of the chamber, the return, and then back to the floor. So we put it into one motion. And the technique simply comes up and hits and back like that. And hits and back like that. So in slow speed, it'll look like this. We want to bring the knee up. Now the knee can be used to deflect an attack. The knee can be used to point your weapon in the direction that you intend to hit. And as we bring the knee up, we're again starting the foot out. We don't want to pull it up and chamber it. Rather, we're pulling the knee up as the foot is going out. So we're increasing our speed. Instead of holding that foot until we get the knee ready, we're now letting the foot go out at the same time that the knee is coming up. So as the knee comes up, the foot is going out and pull back. You can hit with the ball of the foot, which I prefer because it gives a good strong penetration. It's like hitting with a fist as opposed to a slap. The slap being the top of the instep. A lot of people like to hit with the top of the instep, and that's functional too. But if most of your techniques are kept waist level or lower, like the Jeet Kune Do kicking techniques, then I think it's advantageous to kick with the ball of the foot. So the knee comes up, we snap the kick and pull it down. Snap the kick and pull it down. Snap the kick and pull it down. These are the fundamentals for the Jun Fan kickboxing. Ian, if I can get you in here. If you give me a right lead stance. As we prepare to strike the opponent, again, the knee is coming up, and we want to kind of stay under this guard. The opponent's going to have his hands up typically, and it's a little harder to see underneath the elbows like that. So our kick approaches low and then comes in and hits. Just up and hits like that. Up and hits like that. Up and strikes and pulls back. Now we can easily kick down toward the leg or the knee for this, or of course for the groin. And if you're hitting with the ball of the foot, it's a very, very functional kick for you to use. Also, we can do more of a chamber in order to get the foot up higher and kick around so that we can actually kick higher for the technique. As you can see, if you're going to kick that high, it opens up your low line to counterattack. For that reason, Bruce Lee suggested that the kicks be kept below the waist. So we're just going to snap the kick out like that and pull it back. Out like that and pull it back. Notice that there's no chambering technique. There's no forced motion of pulling up, kicking, and pulling back. It's just a snapping action like that. While the front kick is functional for going straight in, sometimes the opponent will have his hand out in front, so I really can't use a front kick. If that takes place, I'm going to use the angle kick around like this. Now you can throw the angle kick or the angling round or hook kick in close to the body like that by pulling your knee in. So even if I'm in tight to my opponent, my knee comes in and I can snap the kick out like that. Snap the kick out like that. Let's turn Ian around right here so you can see the actual kick. From this position, the knee comes up and hits and pulls down. Up and hits and pulls down. Up and hits and pulls down. And it's very easy to penetrate an opponent's offense by sliding this kick right in between. So even if he positions his hands really close like that, I'm still sneaking right in like that. Now remember that if I were to go to the groin, it becomes almost impossible to block this technique. It snaps so quickly that it's very easy to penetrate the opponent's offense without the opponent being able to do anything about it. The hook kick is a very, very functional technique in Jeet Kune Do and one that we use quite often. Here's the 6 slows. In order to achieve some mobility with the hook kick, we again apply the step and slide method. I step up, snap the kick, and step back. Step up, snap the kick, and step back. I can also, to increase my distance as I move in, step out slightly, then step out, then back. So I step out, kick, and then pull back. Or, once again, step up, slide, kick, and back. Now, let's bring Ian in, and we're going to look at how to prepare the hook kick for actual contact. At this time, Ian, let me have you demonstrate, first of all, the more traditional Tang Soo Do style of round kick. If you would, snap it up here high. Okay, again, and again, and again. And now you can notice that as Ian performs the traditional, the classical method of the round kick, first of all, he's using it in the context of the sport, using the slap or the top of the instep to hit with. He's also chambering. Notice the chamber here, chamber. Okay, now as he chambers it up like this, it telegraphs the technique to the opponent. Okay, so as he begins to chamber, the opponent can move in quickly and snap a counter technique. Okay, so as he chambers, he then snaps and pulls back into his chambered position. Now the one advantage to pulling back into a chambered position, I'll demonstrate that, okay, is that you have multiple techniques that you can throw there. Okay, and if you'll just demonstrate a double. Okay, so there's an advantage to that. But the disadvantage as he throws the kick is that I can shoot right under that with my front kick very easily and complete an excellent self-defense technique. Okay, so as we perform these kicks, working back and forth, we just want him to make some contact and back. We can also, using the focus pad drill, let him slide up and kick and slide back. Ian, if you'll step back, and now slide up and kick, and pull back, slide up and kick, and pull back. Now, let's change that into the Jeet Kune Do format using those principles of being non-telegraphic. Okay, so if you just try the Jeet Kune Do style of kick using the ball of the foot and back, okay, that's better. And you want a little more snap as the heel comes back. That's it. And emphasize pulling down at the same time. Okay, the disadvantage of doing the classical kick is that you get used to chambering and leaving that foot up. You chamber and you kick and your foot stays up. On the Jeet Kune Do kick, we're kicking, we're pulling back. So notice how the hip rocks up and back as we do the technique. Okay? And if you're used to snapping out, it's harder to pull back. Although we realize that as you kick the technique, okay, that's when your opponent is going to try to counter by striking your leg. So you want to make sure that you get it back quicker. Let's try it a couple more times. Ready? Kick. And that's it. Pull it back quickly. Kick. And pull the hips down and kick. And kick. Good. All right, now another way to practice with this particular kick is to get an opponent, a partner here, and just work back and forth. So maybe I'll slide in and do the kick, then he slides in, does the kick, then I slide in, and I slide in. We can work back and forth like that, just using our Jeet Kune Do style of hook kick. Now let's take a look at the inverted hook kick. We just completed the hook kick that comes around like this to kick, and sometimes we'll find that we don't have an opening to this side, so we have to invert or twist the kick around to the inside. So on this kick, where the knee comes up in the same position, only the foot goes inward like that, snapping, inward and snapping, inward and snapping. Now I'm hitting with, once again, the ball of the foot. I want that penetration by pulling the toes back and hitting with the ball of the foot, or again, if I have on good strong shoes, don't even need to be concerned about pulling those toes back. I'll just hit with the toe of the shoe. But I bring my knee up, I twist it around and pull it back. Knee comes up, twist it around and pull it back, just like that. Again, at fast speed, we're going back like this. Now, so far, we have the front kick, the hook kick, and the inverted hook kick. And if I can use you, I'll demonstrate how that's used. Once again, the front kick, if you have the opening straight in, if you are denied access to that target, you can then hook the kick around. It's essentially the same kick, only it moves from a different angle to the opponent. In some cases, we don't have access to that target, or let's say that our opponent switched sides. Give me a left lead. Okay, so that our hook kick would not actually hit anything that would be desirable for self-defense. So I'm just going to invert the kick, I'm just going to twist it around, and now I'm ready to hit. Just like that. Throwing the kick, just snapping, being non-telegraphic as I throw the kick out. Now, this can be very, very functional for a groin type of kick because my opponent can't even really see that coming. It's going to be so quick as I hit my opponent. Full speed. Ian, let's get you in here, and we're going to try the focus pad a few times. And Ian, if you'll take a left lead, just because I'm happen to be turned this way. And now, as you do the kick, let me just demonstrate, first of all, your basic karate style of kicking. Ready? In 1. Let's just see how you would hit it. Now, hit it hard. 2, and 3, and 4. Okay, now notice that he rotates the hips really a lot, and that's, again, that chambering mechanism for his particular style. When we cut that out, we get it down to a more essential kick, something that's a little more simple and direct. And as he does that, also, a couple of times he was hitting with the top of the instep. You can use the top of the instep sometime. But in this case, again, if we're kicking low, we hit with the ball of the foot, stick it right into the opponent. So, Ian, let's try it this time. Up and kick, okay, and nice and quick, and okay, and pull it back quickly. And try not to twist your hands down. A lot of systems, the hands will come down for technique. You don't want to give it away by dropping the hands down. So 1, good, and 2, and pull it back. Remember, with roll speed, you want to get it back quickly. 3, good, 4, and 5. All right, that's looking pretty good there. Now, as Ian, just stay right here for a minute, if you would. A few other points that you should be aware of on throwing this inverted kick. If we do put more hip into it, we can get more penetration. So if we're just doing a snapping kick like that, we're going to get some power. But if we'll take that foot and twist it in, we can get more penetration. Also, we can vary the contact point. Instead of using the ball of the foot, I'm going to use the top of the instep, and here's why. Sometimes I'll be working an opponent, and I'll get the opponent to move their head down. When they do that, I'll take that instep, kick, and kick right back like that. Now that'll just throw their head straight up in the air, and as they do that, I'm ready to follow through with additional techniques. So once again, the basic inverted hook comes up and strikes, up and strikes. If I want to get more power, I twist it in just like that, or if I want to go high to the head, moving in close like that, and if his head is forward, I'll just come back and hit with the top of the instep, just like that. Now we're going to put the kick into an actual application of sparring. As we move back and forth, Ian, you're just going to throw a inverted hook kick, and I'll just exchange it back and forth. There's mine, and you throw one. And notice that we're just stepping back and forth, just like that, as we kick. We can change positions if we wanted to, and I'll throw one, Ian throw the kick, and I'll move in, move the kick back and forth like that. And now, let me mention that the inverted hook kick is an excellent kick for changing direction. Ian, come right here for a second. So I can put it into a combination kick in which I am faking in one direction and switching back, or what is sometimes referred to as a progressive indirect attack, which I'm actually changing the rhythm, the timing and the distance. So I'll start the kick and then move back. Start the kick and then move back. And it's much harder to focus on an inverted kick because you're used to seeing the technique come up, such as the hook kick, and it just switches for you in midair. The inverted hook kick is a very functional technique that we use in the Jun Fan kickboxing. It's often been brought out that Bruce Lee borrowed from many different styles in developing his kicking techniques. From the Northern Shaolin, he had a number of kicking skills. He worked with Jun Rhee to develop some of his kicks. He taught Chuck Norris, and he worked with one of his students, Joe Louis. Joe Louis was a world kickboxing champion, national champion. He was voted the greatest karate fighter of all time. And in fact, he was my mentor and instructor in this form of Jun Fan kickboxing. But from his work with these various individuals, he developed a very high level with his side kick. I want to demonstrate some of the parameters, some of the principles, and some of the functions of the side kick at this time. First of all, if we go into our stance or on guard position, we'll find that the side kick actually works better when we happen to be a little more sideways, hence the word side kick. Now in the traditional karate type of styles, they'll bring the foot up, chamber, snap the kick out, pull it back, hitting with the blade or the side of the foot. Bruce Lee felt that it was more functional to hit with the bottom of the heel, and in fact, it is more functional to do so. Also, we want to be non-chambering, so we don't want to do any techniques such as pull the foot back in or arch the foot up too high as we do the technique. The side kick, like the other kicks, is designed to go from our stance so that it can't be easily picked up. It has to be deceptive. We can increase our speed by moving. We can increase our power by increasing the arc of the kick. And deceptiveness we increase by being non-telegraphic. So the side kick works like this. We bring the foot up, and as the foot is coming up, as the knee is coming up, the foot is going out as well, and down. Up and down like that. Up and down like that. Now we can snap the kick by pulling it back like this, pulling it back like that. Okay? Or we can lock the kick out as we're throwing more power. If you do lock the kick out, remember that your opponent can damage your leg as they tend to attempt a leg destruction there. Okay, so the foot comes up, we hit, pull back. Foot comes up at the same time that the knee is coming up in position, and you strike out and pull back. Now, on this particular line, keep in mind that I want to avoid pulling my foot behind the line of attack, the line of attack being a straight line from my body to my intended target. And so while the front kick goes on the line of attack, the hook kick comes behind the line of attack, the inverted hook comes inside the line of attack, and the side kick stays on the line of attack. If I pull my side kick behind my line of attack, like the hook kick, I'm going to end up with kind of a side hook kick. I won't get a hook kick, I won't get a side kick. So make sure that as you're practicing, that sometimes you can place your hand out in front of you if you want to. Make sure that this foot doesn't come behind that line of attack, but rather stays on the line of attack. You'll get more power there. So as the foot comes up, we kick, pull it back, and sit it down. Snap it, pull it back, and sit it down. Now, working with Joe Louis, Bruce Lee developed a step-through side kick. Now, obviously, the step-through side kick that I'm going to demonstrate is going to be considerably more telegraphic. But sometimes, in order to increase our power, we have to give up some other function. In this case, we won't be quite as deceptive, because you'll notice as I do the kick, I'm actually banging the floor in order to pull off and get more power. On the step-through side kick, I take a step out, step behind, then pulling the foot up, thrust out, like that. Many of you have no doubt seen some of the backyard tapes produced by Bruce Lee in which he's kicking the focus pad. And you'll notice that he's actually taking a big step out and then following through with the kick. That's how you get maximum power in this step-through side kick. Once again, we step out. Now, you can step straight out, but then you have to step behind. So I would suggest that you step out at a slight angle, This facilitates the foot coming behind. The knee is then brought up as the foot is coming out, and then we pull the foot down, and then we can shuffle back into position. To throw the kick, we're going to step out and hit, pull back. We're going to step out and hit and pull back. And if you want really maximum power, then you'll really take a big step and forget about the chambering part of it. Just thrust the kick out like that. You'll get maximum power for the kick. Ian, let's make a comparison of the traditional type of side kick along with the Jeet Kune Do side kick. If you'll demonstrate the more traditional Japanese side kick. 1, notice the chamber and the hitting with the blade of the foot. 2, that's it, and 3. And you can see that when he chambers, it'd be very easy to stop that kick because he's telegraphing the technique. Also, as he starts to pull his leg back in the chamber, he's again holding in position so that it'd be easy to destruct the foot as well. So let's see if we can't cut out those two items, the chamber going up and the chamber coming back, and hitting with the bottom of the heel. That's a little better. 1 and 2, pull it back quickly, 3. Now remember, when you are chambering, when you're chambering the technique, you get used to sitting the hips up. And if you're not used to pulling the hips down, it takes an extra second or 2. Let's try 1 or 2 more and see if you can't get your head back to vertical position. And 2 and 3. All right, so for the side kick, we can easily move back and forth like that. And then, of course, we want to put it in a sparring type of situation for our training in which I'll just step forward and hit, and then Ian will step in and hit, and I'll move in and hit, and back and forth just like that. Now notice that we're doing the step and slide with our side kick the same way. And the block or defense, we just kind of come down for that. And that should give you a good impression of how to perform the Jeet Kune Do side kick. For the most part, the oblique kick is going to be unique to the Jeet Kune Do system. Bruce Lee designed this oblique kick to capture his opponent and also to immobilize the kicks that his opponent was throwing. From our on-guard position, we just bring the foot up very much like a front kick, but turn it in an oblique direction. So the kick comes up and snaps just like that. Up and snaps just like that. And we're hitting with this part of the foot, the inner part of the sole. So we come up and hit and back like that. Up and hit and back. Now you can use this oblique kick to come up and drop down on the opponent, or simply to immobilize temporarily the kick by snapping it out like that. It also causes your opponent to be aggravated with those little chipping type of techniques that are hitting in the leg. It causes them to be off balance and they have to think about the attacks from the lower sector of the body. So we just kind of come up and snap with a kick just like that. Now the knee is brought up very much like the front kick, only we turn the foot out, which rotates the knee out. We come up and hit and pull back. What you don't want to do is turn your foot and try to hit like this. Okay? You want to avoid that. But by getting the snap, you just come up and snap it out just like that as you're doing the oblique kick. Now, a lot of times the oblique kick is used in motion, so as we're stepping back and forth, we come up and hit and move back. Step up, hit, and move back in that process. And Ian, if you'll come in and we'll try this on a focus pad. Now remember, as you're training at home, you want to go through the stepping, the actual dramatization that is trying the techniques perhaps in the mirror or by yourself, and then see if you can't get a partner that can come in with a focus pad. On this kick, since it's intended to be a low kick, I'll just go down to one knee and let Ian try it a few times. Ready? And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4, and 5. Okay, and you can work back and forth with that. Another good way to do that, go ahead and take a left lead, is I'll throw out the kick and then let my partner throw the kick. Then I'll throw the kick and my partner throw the kick. Just like that. Now, you'll notice that once you develop some expertise with this particular kick, you can actually throw it up into the body. I can actually come up with the kick and using the bottom of my heel, stick it right into my opponent like that. Can you feel how that would hurt, Ian? Sure. Okay. Or I can bring it up and drive down like that. I can bring this kick up and drive down. I can switch positions and still throw the kick in. By bringing the kick in and curving out with the bottom of the heel, I can use a very powerful oblique kick in that manner as well. Ultimately, the Jun Fan method should not be dependent on one or two kicks, but rather those kicks put together when necessary. This time I'm going to have Ian come out. We're just going to move around some. I'll be throwing the kicks. Ian's just going to block as we move around. I'm going to throw some oblique kicks, some hook kicks, some front kicks. I'm going to change position as we move around, just to show you how those work. Gee, Ian, it makes it too easy for me when you're not doing anything. The actual translation of Jeet Kune Do means the way of the intercepting fist. Certainly within the context of the art, the hand techniques are of primary concern. There are 5 that we're going to work on in this series. First of all is the straight lead. Using our on-guard posture, our hands go up, and it's this fist out in front that is the primary weapon of the Jeet Kune Do fighter. The elbows are kept inside to protect the ribs. The hand goes straight out. The shoulder comes up as we punch. Now, Bruce Lee was interested in having the vertical fist. You would actually strike with the bottom 3 knuckles as you go out. And as the hand prepares, there's a slight drop to emphasize those knuckles going in. So once again, as the hand comes out, it's coming down and dropping up like that. You're also pushing the shoulder in for additional power, and also the hip moving in slightly gives you that power. And so from the on-guard position, the straight lead typically works like this. We punch out and hit and pull it back. Punch out and hit and pull it back. Punch out and hit and pull it back. Now, the return path can also be changed somewhat. In other words, we can punch out and pull it back in. Now, that gives us a little more power with the shoulder and the hip. We're pushing the shoulder out, pushing the hip in like this as we strike with the technique. We can also increase our power by a slight step with the forward foot. So we're moving out and hitting it back, hitting it back, and hitting it back. Now this technique is designed to be very deceptive as it's moving straight forward against the opponent. And also we're utilizing a maximum speed by increasing the hip, the shoulder, going straight out, and by pulling it back in off of that straight line, we're getting back a delivery, a return that's even faster still. And so the fundamental straight punch comes out and back, out and back, out and back. There are some variations on the straight punch. Here they are. First of all, we can punch straight out and back. Now, by pulling straight back, we're actually facilitating a reverse punch, okay, as opposed to putting all of our power into this one technique and getting the twisting motion. In this case, by pulling straight back, we're ready to punch with a second punch like that, or third, for a blast or a blitzing type of technique. Also, we can turn the hand over. The typical boxer likes to take the hand and torque it over and turn and pull back, using those same principles of guarding the ribs, keeping the shoulder up for protection, and pulling it back down, out and back like that. And also, we can snap, getting more of a boxer's type of jab in on the technique. And so we went from our full power vertical punch to our turnover punch, okay, to even a more powerful pulling of the punch and a fast, speedy snapping of the punch. Anytime that you pick up the punching techniques, you have to have the mobility, the footwork. So at this time, we'll simply step forward. Again, using that step and slide out as we punch. You want to try to time it so that at the same time that the fist is touching the target, the foot should be going against the floor. So we're hitting like this, hitting like that, Okay, now that gives us our body weight. Our whole body is moving into the technique as we strike. So instead of just punching with our hand, we're now using our whole body weight to increase the momentum and speed and power for this straight lead punch. And this is the primary weapon in a lot of the Jeet Kune Do fighting type of techniques. After you've had the opportunity to try these, perhaps in a mirror, perhaps just standing and trying the techniques, it's time to get a focus pad. You have to hit something to get a feel for the actual power in the technique. Ian? First of all, Ian, let's demonstrate the traditional, more of the karate or taekwondo or kung fu type of straight punch. It'd come from the hip and you punch out like that. 1 and 2. And now, the problems with this type of a punch are, of course, that the body is wide open. The hand is actually here protecting the hip, and in fact it should be up to protect the face. And the advantage to this is since you're covering a longer distance, you're actually increasing your power somewhat. Now let's go up to the Jeet Kune Do type of punch, okay, which is going to come straight out. Ready? 1 and 2 and 3. Okay, and you want to be hitting with these bottom 3 knuckles, and you're also dropping the hand as you're punching out like that. 1 and 2, that's it. Okay, make sure that the shoulder stays up and the elbow guards the hip there. Okay, 1 and 2. All right, now Ian, to get more power, remember we can step forward with the foot. Your stance is a little too wide right now, a little more karate-like. You want to have a little more mobile stance. So 1, that's it. 2 and 3 and 4. All right. Now, once you have the fundamentals, the focus pad drill there, let's look at how we would actually apply that vertical punch. First of all, against the opponent, if you could, zone out and strike straight in. That's exactly the way you want to do it, right here. Anytime you hit to the base of the chin, there's a good chance you're going to get a knockout. So we're just going to punch straight out like that. If we're going to the body, we need to drop our center of gravity somewhat to hit with this. And this can still be a very powerful punch. Ideally, if you're going to use the vertical punch and you've already moved in against your opponent, you're in position to where you're driving. And this punch can be used in tight like this to push your opponent back out of the way so that you can then follow in with punches. Let me demonstrate that one more time. Okay, so if his punch is out, I'll just intercept and move in. And once I'm in tight like this, by dropping the fist, I'm actually pushing my opponent out of the way so that I could follow through with additional punches. That gives us that space that we need in order to make the technique work. In addition to that interpretation of the vertical punch, remember that the straight lead can be used as a boxer's jab, okay, by turning it over or by stepping over and getting even more power with it. Be sure that you keep the left hand up for protection. Now in Jeet Kune Do, again, if you're using the blasting type of techniques, your hands are going to stay more out in front, like this as you strike. If you're going into more of a boxing jab, you need to get this left hand back for protection. You do not want to be in position which you're hitting with the forward hand and forgetting about the reverse. The problem is that a person throwing any type of a hook will catch you wide open as you do that. So as we perform the technique, we want to make sure that our hand is up for protection as we do that. Now, one way to practice that is moving back and forth. And if you'll throw in with a jab, and I'll just kind of deflect it like that, and I'll throw it back, and we're just going to move back and forth just like this. Okay, not actually making contact, but just using that hand up to check, just like that. Just getting used to our opponent working back and forth like that. Let's go back to that theme of using no way as the only way. In this case, we're going to use the cross, the left cross. If our right side is out in front, use the left cross. Typically, if you know how to do the straight lead, you simply do it off the reverse side. The punch comes straight out and pulls straight back, straight out and back. In some cases, I want to keep this hand up for a rally or a blitz or a blast, a combination of techniques thrown at full speed. In other cases, I want to try for more power. If I'm trying for more power, I might use my strong side and place it on the reverse like this. In this case, I'm actually getting more power because I'm covering greater distance. Greater distance, more power. It takes longer to get there, but when it gets there, it's going to have more power on it. Now, in order to throw this either vertical or turnover punch, you can throw either one, it works like this. From the hand, from our fighting position, we first of all start the hand out. Weapon first is the principle we're using here. You start the weapon at the target. Okay, starting the weapon at the target, you then twist your knee in, pull your shoulder forward, and now you're going to sit down, dropping your hips. Now, the reason we're doing that is to get our entire body weight for the technique. Okay, so we're going to get our power from the shoulder, from this hip moving in, and also from the whole body weight dropping down. So we have a 1, 2, and 3 positions for power there. Okay, so here we go again. The punch is going to go straight out, and the shoulder is going to come up, knee drops down, and you're going to torque and just sit on the punch directly out in front of you, the fist, the shoulder, all covering, and now we're exposed here, so we want to quickly pull it back and generate back into our position. Okay, so we're going to punch and pull back, punch and pull back, punch and pull back. Now, whether this hand is open and closed isn't really too important. Typically, if you're going to throw a right cross, you'll preface it with a punch and a follow through. 1, 2, like that. A 1 and a 2 and a 1 and a 2. But this is perhaps the most powerful hand skill that you can use to reverse punch. Using your power side, you're stepping out, using the shoulder, the hip, dropping the weight just at the point of impact, dropping your weight down, getting more power, and then pulling back quickly. You want to make sure that you don't raise the shoulder, which lessens your ability to throw power. Sometimes a beginner will actually bring the shoulder up, which telegraphs the technique, and then punch straight out, like that. That's what you don't want to do. What you want to do is keep that shoulder in tight as your hand is moving forward to the target. Now notice that this technique is the same as that technique. See? You're throwing the same lead hand punch off the reverse side. It comes across the body as you throw the technique. So as we set it up, we're just punching straight out. Whether you're turning it over or using the vertical fist just depends on who you're trying to hit or the end result there. Okay? I prefer the turnover punch myself if I'm going to throw a reverse punch or a right cross. Same technique off the front side or off the reverse side. Same technique like that. Only by throwing it off the reverse side, you can double your power with the technique. As we do the technique, we can also put that footwork back into it. And so typically we want to move forward and hit and step back. Forward and hit and step back. Forward and hit and step back. Or if we do this in combination with the straight lead, we go 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, in that manner as we perform the cross. For comparison, let's look at the Jeet Kune Do cross along with the karate style of cross. Ian, you'll come on in here, and if you just sit up with a left lead, we're going to throw that reverse punch. Notice it starts a lot of times by the hip. Some practitioners come up to the chest for that. Ready? 1, and pull it back fast, and 2, and 3. Now, a lot of times the classical stylists will lock that position. Now, by locking the position, the person actually is in a more stable stance. Unfortunately, if they miss, or if that one punch doesn't do everything it's supposed to do, they're in a very awkward position. In other words, if he punches out and locks and holds, and ki, ready, 1, okay, and lock it. Okay, now, see his body is wide open to counter here. So that's the disadvantage of that wide, deep stance. You can actually get more power. In fact, the karate people are well known for being able to break boards and bricks and people if they stand there. But if your target moves on you, you have to go to another system. And that's where the Jeet Kune Do comes into play. Now, by bringing the hand up, and let's try, notice the stance is much tighter in. Ready? 1, and stamp it. 2, pull it back quickly. 3, and 4, and 5. And notice that he's very close, so it's going to be hard to hit him in the process of his performance of the individual skill. And this is the way that we would practice with a focus pad on the reverse punch. A lot of times we'll put that and have the coach hold up the focus pad and we'll try a jab cross combination or any number of combinations with the right cross. And in fact, a good one is the hook and the cross and such as that. And hopefully we'll get a chance to show those later on. At this time, let's just demonstrate how you would use the right cross. If I've already set the person up by making him react to one technique, just give me a reaction there, okay, then that opens the lower line to follow through for a punch. Or, a lot of times I'll make contact with one and then be ready to follow through with the other technique like that. So 1 and 2. And this punch turned over is going to give me maximum power as I use my Jun Fan kickboxing technique. A third line of attack for the Jeet Kune Do hand techniques includes the back fist, or sometimes called the back knuckle. You're actually hitting with the back of the knuckles here. In traditional karate, we were first taught to step forward, to put the body in position, and then follow through with the back knuckle. You can see that that's very telegraphic. In fact, who couldn't see it coming? Now, in respect to the karate practitioners, you're again picking up more power. By pulling the body into it, getting set, and striking, you can generate maximum power. But sometimes maximum power isn't exactly what we want. We have to have that speed. Remember, there are 3 primary attributes in increasing our ability to throw these techniques. We can increase the speed, the power, and the deceptiveness. In this case, by not chambering the technique and telegraphing the technique, it becomes much more deceptive. You don't know exactly what we're doing here. Also, we utilize weapon first. Weapon first means you start the weapon before you move the body. In the traditional arts or classical arts, we're taught to move the body, then move the weapon. In Jeet Kune Do, we move the weapon first, then the body. So this becomes non-telegraphic, weapon first, simple and direct. The left hand is kept up for protection. The body is in an on-guard mobile position. The hands are up, and the back hand goes out and back. Now, what happens is, if you're looking straight ahead, the body, the opponent actually picks up on the body. They see this big object moving, and they lose sight of the little fist. So watch what happens. Here is, first of all, using the body first. You can see it, see? The body comes in, and then there's the back fist. Now watch with the weapon first for the Jeet Kune Do. See, by the time you see it, hopefully, it's already hit you. And the back fist comes straight out and pulls back like that. Back fist out and pulls straight back. Once more, out and back and out and back. Now you can increase some power by having a greater arc, but you can also get that power by pushing the shoulder in and the hip in and stepping as you do the technique. And that's the way we perform the Jeet Kune Do back fist. At this time, let's introduce Ian again, and we're going to use the focus pad as part of our training. The coach will hold the focus pad up, and then, Ian, first of all, let's demonstrate that traditional, the karate style. 1, and you can see what he's doing there. 2, and that's a full arc, but it's a very powerful technique. Now, you can get that same power by utilizing the body weight forward and straightening out that back fist. Let's try the Jeet Kune Do style. 1, and 2, and 3. And 4. Okay, so once again, the defense, the hands are up, and the hand is coming straight in to strike the opponent. Now, in application, give me a right lead if you would. The back fist can be used both to strike, to immobilize that forward hand, which sets up a series of techniques, or it can be used to go straight in against the opponent. Come right here, Ian. So as we do the back fist, rather than telegraph the technique by coming up like this, and he can obviously put his hand out, what I'm going to do is try to shoot the hand straight out like that. See, so the hand comes straight out, weapon first, becomes very deceptive as I strike out. Okay, so as he's in position and I'm stepping forward, I just move straight out like that for the back fist. Now, if you do pull your back fist back in this position, you've really increased your speed. You've used up your energy and your technique and your position for maximum speed. But when your hand comes back like this, you're not defensively in a strong position. So, if I wanted to throw it in combination, I need to keep it without that last little turn for the technique. But you can see how the back fist can be a very functional technique in Jeet Kune Do. Let's look now at the hook punch. The hook punch is used to generate that force in more of a circular fashion around to the opponent. There are several ways to throw a hook punch, of course. In Jeet Kune Do, we want to try to generate a technique that's going to be simple and direct, yet get maximum power and efficiency from the strike. Here's what we do. The left hand is, of course, up for protection. The right fist, we're hitting with the hand across like this, comes out and back. We're keeping the elbow down, again, to protect the ribs. So a simple form of hook goes across and back like that, making a slight circle. So you're hitting and pulling it back in, hitting and pulling it back in. Now, as we increase the arc, here's the arc, as we increase the arc, we can also increase the force of the technique. And if you're going to come up as high as 90 degrees, it's really advantageous to start pulling the elbow up. Now, what happens when you do that? When you do pull the elbow up for the hook punch, you're now exposing the ribs to the kick. So that's the disadvantage. The advantage is more power. Disadvantage is, of course, you lose some of your defense. So for that reason, the hook is generally thrown in Jeet Kune Do around like this, across. Now we can increase our speed by pushing the shoulder into it, by stepping in. In other words, we're getting to our target quicker by stepping into it. And we can also increase our power by doing those same things. The shoulder twisting and torquing, the hip, and then stepping with the body weight. So instead of just hitting with our arm, we now have our whole body weight going into the technique. Across, like that. The hook comes out like that. Now typically, when throwing the hook, we will put it in a combination. A combination might include a jab, a cross, and a hook. If you're using it in that type of combination, a lot of times we'll step back for power in the hooking technique. In other words, you're pulling it in. In many cases, you'll step out and hook. You can step forward with your footwork and do the hook as well. So the hook starts in tight, protecting the body. It could be a straight punch, or it could hook back, or it could be a back fist. You can work the back fist and the hook in unison, like that. Okay? So the hook comes up, strikes it back, and strikes it back. And that's the way we do the hook punch for the Jeet Kune Do. In order to increase our effectiveness, we want to actually strike something. So, Ian, let's get that focus pad out. We'll try the hook against the focus pad. Take your stance, and we're just going to come up and hook across. 1 and 2. All right, now notice that as Ian is throwing, he's going for the full arc across and hitting and pulling back. And again, the disadvantage is that body's going to be open, but you can actually generate more force. If you watch any tapes on Mike Tyson or some of the better boxers, they're actually throwing their whole body as they initiate a hook type of technique. It can be a maximum power technique. In Jeet Kune Do, It can be both a power technique, but primarily it's used as a fast little stamping type of technique. Ian, let's keep that elbow down a little and try the hook. 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. And again, you can see there's a difference in power there. Now, in order to pick up more power, he would need to start stepping out with the hip, torquing the hip, pushing the shoulder into it. Let's try that a couple times. 1, that's it, 2, and 3. That's a little bit better as we do the Jeet Kune Do type of hook. Now, the hook is used a lot of times in combination with other techniques. Ian, come right here. Give me a left lead. Typically in boxing, the jab, cross, hook combination is used. Now, Bruce Lee actually watched the boxing techniques over a period of time and incorporated the boxing footwork, the mobility, and much of the hand techniques. It's often said that he would watch tapes of Muhammad Ali in a mirror, which would make Muhammad Ali, instead of left hand lead, he'd be a right lead, a Jeet Kune Do, strong side forward. So Bruce Lee was able to pick up on that. The combinations typically thrown in the boxing include a jab, cross, and then the hook back like that. We can double up on the hook. We can throw the hook into the body and then back to the head. We can also throw the hook from the reverse side. Sometimes if a person is jabbing over top and we slid down underneath, we can hook back in like this and hook back again like that. So the hook is thrown in combinations like that. We're going to both take a right lead and we just move around some and use a few hooking techniques. So if you'll just step in and hook, and how we would do this typically is put on boxing gloves and we'd actually hook into the body. So as I throw my hook out at him, he would put the arm in like this, so I end up hitting, and then he'd hit, and then I'd move back and actually throw the body and hook. And once again, as you see me throw this, it's body and twisting in like that. So I'm really getting a lot of power on that hook. Let me demonstrate. Ian, can I have a boxing glove there? And if I'll position you right over here. I want to kind of demonstrate how this hook punch can be used. Put your left lead forward. Now, as I'm throwing the technique, watch what I'm doing. I'm actually just kind of reaching out and smacking my opponent. You can see what I'm doing there. Just hitting. Against the camera, I'm just kind of coming across like that as I throw the technique. But I'm getting my power, not so much from my arm hitting like that, it's almost slapping, but rather my hip and my shoulder moving in. Now, the closer you are into the target, the easier it becomes to throw the hip in. But unfortunately, a lot of times your opponent won't be that close and you want to throw that hook. So we're just kind of reaching out and hitting like that. Now notice that I'm trying not to arc out too far. That becomes very telegraphic. I want to stay straight in and get my power by twisting my hip and shoulder. So I'm just moving and hitting like that. Moving and hitting just with my hook punch. Now, the hook punch can be a very powerful technique for the Jun Fan fighter. The fifth technique that I'd like to show you is the uppercut. The uppercut is used to take the head up. It can be thrown to the body, or it can be to lift the head up. The uppercut typically works like this. It's oftentimes thrown from the reverse side. So if we have the right lead out in front, the left hand would come in front, just like we turn that left cross. Body comes in front, and then you're simply punching up. But obviously that's not going to give you much power. So we have to drop the body weight and lift. Drop the body weight, lift. The knees straighten out just a little. The hip comes up as you start the technique. As you lift, and you're going to pull up like this. Now, what's very good is if you can lift with your uppercut, and then once you've lifted the head up, follow back with your hook. So 1, 2 will be the technique. You can also throw the uppercut off the forward side. And throwing the uppercut off the forward side, we simply throw the hand out and up. A lot of times people will throw what we sometimes refer in sport karate as the upset punch. The punch goes straight out, and they call that an upper type of punch. Or we can punch it straight up like the typical boxer. So for the uppercut, we want to emphasize the body lifting, punching up, and in this case, if you come off the reverse side, you have to twist the hips in and lift up like that, like this. In combination, we throw 1, 2. You want to make sure that your hands don't drop down as you begin throwing the uppercut. Simply up and back, and follow that direct line as you're throwing the technique. Keeping the chin down, the shoulder comes up for your protection, as we're throwing the uppercut. After you have the general direction of the uppercut, it's important to put on some gloves, get some focus pads, and try the techniques out. You just don't know how they work until you actually make some contact. Ian, I'll do the hitting this time. You come right over here. These are just kind of bag gloves. They're 12 ounce, and they're fairly light as far as the hitting is concerned. If I were going to do actual sparring, of course, I want to wrap the hands, but right now I'm just demonstrating some focus pad techniques. Okay, now for the uppercut, typically you'll have your coach stand in front of you like this. It'll be about chin level. You're just going to lift up like that. You'll have a tendency to want to overextend the technique. Come way down here and throw the punch. Okay, so you want to kind of discipline yourself to lift with the hips and throw the punch. Sometimes you might want to throw the punch straight up. Sometimes you might want to turn the punch around like that. Make sure that that arm stays in front for your protection. Okay, so I'm just going to throw a couple uppercuts. I just lift and hit, just like that. Lift and hit. And I'm going to try not to come too far down as I throw the uppercut. If I want to throw the forward uppercut, again, I just lift it up like that as I'm throwing the techniques here. Now, let me finish up here and just go ahead and throw a series of techniques for you. We'll start off with just a jab here. So I'm just stepping out and throwing my jab. I want to make sure that my hand comes straight back to the body as I throw that jab. It might also work in a hook. A hook will position just out like that. Just come across and hook. Sometimes I might want to throw a jab and hook combination. When I do that, I want to get them about in right angles like that. So I go 1, 2. And as I'm moving, 1, 2. With my hook. 1, 2, like that. Another good combination that I like to use when I'm using the focus pad is just a jab cross combination. Put this hand down. I'll punch out 1, 2, like that. 1, 2, like that. 1, 2. I want to try to keep my chin down as I'm punching. Now notice that when I throw my jab, I've moved the target back, and I will have to compensate by stepping in a little bit closer. Okay, so I'll punch 1 and 2 and step in. This time, I'll try a combination of 3. I'll throw the 1, the jab, the 2, the cross, the 3, the hook. Put them a little bit closer together. And from a moving position, okay. Now, if I add the uppercut to this sequence, I might want to use an uppercut hook. Remember that if I can get my opponent to lift the head, then I can get a very powerful hooking punch. So in this case, we'll put it up just like that. I'll throw an uppercut, hook combination. Okay. So a lot of times if I'm moving around with my coach, I'll have them move around, hold the focus pads down, and then put them up one at a time so that the coach, in effect, tells me what to do for the techniques. But it's important that you put on some gloves, you get out with some focus pads, and you move around using this series of techniques. I'll just go ahead and throw some more. A lot of people would watch these 5 kicking techniques and 5 punching techniques and say, is that all there is? Well, it is and it isn't. Remember, for each of those techniques, there are an infinite number of ways in which we can reproduce them. That is, to say using no way as way, again refers to no single way as the only way you can perform the technique. Just as we saw, the hook punch could be formed in close and a wider arc like this. The back fist can have the wider arc or in tight like that. You have to find out what works best for you, because ultimately my system, my production of the Jeet Kune Do principles might not be exactly the way you're going to perform it. You have to find out what you're strong at and focus on those specific techniques. Now, in this next tape, we're going to look at the strategy of Jeet Kune Do, the plan. What is your plan? What do you intend to do when you get out there to spar, or you're in a self-defense situation where you have to defend yourself? Are you going to be the grappler, the kicker, the puncher? Are you going to put all the techniques together? This first tape in the series was to give you the fundamental techniques. And so in the next tape, we're going to look at the strategy on how to actually apply these techniques, both in full contact fighting and in self-defense. But ultimately, it's up to you to glove up, get a partner, and get out and try the techniques. I hope you've enjoyed this first in the series of Jeet Kune Do Scientific Street Fighting. Now, Ian, let's do a little practice here. Bring it left lead for this. Okay, you're working. Welcome to tape number 2 in our continuing series entitled Jeet Kune Do Scientific Street Fighting. My name is Jerry Beasley, and I'll be your instructor for this tape. In tape number 2, we're going to look at strategies. What is your plan of action? The strategy for Jeet Kune Do is to intercept the intentions of the opponent. We have to have, first of all, mobility. If you have mobility, you can move. If you can move, you can control the distance. He who controls the distance controls the fight. We're going to look at several techniques for using mobility and our 5 ways of attack and our sparring. At the end of the tape, we'll look a little bit at the matrix approach to Jeet Kune Do. Our first technique that we're going to work on is called the step and slide method. This is our method for moving forward and back against an opponent. We'll take our stance, and then want to take the right foot forward slightly, the left foot sliding out. Right foot forward slightly, left foot sliding out. If we want to move back away from our opponent, we take our back foot and slide. Back foot and slide, back foot and slide. It's a relatively easy method of moving forward and back, directly in, directly away from your opponent. Once again, step, slide, step, slide. Now sometimes you'll incorporate the upper body to give you a little more momentum as you move. The arms moving back, back, the arms moving forward and forward. Generally speaking, you don't want to telegraph any motion either moving forward or back. So your hands will stay in position, but you can make your body work for you. The body, again, moving forward and back. Now notice that the reverse foot, the heel is off the floor, and the front foot, the foot is on the floor. You want to basically, as you're moving around, be on the balls of the feet. You'll find that you'll be a little bit faster if you do that. Notice that the front foot now, the heel is off the floor as I step forward and back. Now you don't want to be too tense as you do this, but certainly in a demonstration it might look like we're very structured as we perform. Step, step, back, back. Step, step, back, back. Now it doesn't matter whether you have the right lead or the left lead for this, and certainly in some circumstances you'll be forced to put the left side out in front. Or it may be a preference for you. Same rule applies. The front foot, if you're moving forward, move the front foot first, then let the reverse foot come up. Front foot, then reverse. If you're moving back, let the back foot move. Front foot, back and back. Forward, forward, back and back. Now, as you're moving like this, the reason that we want to move that front foot first is sometimes you'll step out and be tentative. In other words, you'll think that you want to bridge the gap, but then decide to come back on it. And by making the front foot move first, you're much more in position to do that as you move. Let's try it back with the right. And what we want to do this time is just rock back and forth. And you can hear kind of the cadence of the step. Step, step and slide. Step, step and slide. Now from this position I can move forward. or I can start moving a little bit faster as I do the routine. And once again, that's our step, forward and back. As you practice these techniques in a mirror or perhaps by yourself, you then want to take the next step and get a partner to come in. I'll be using Ian Marshall again today as my partner. Ian, if you'll just take a position there and you're a little too close, so let's have you move back first of all, or you can move forward. Okay, step forward and step back, and step forward and step back. Okay, now I want you to take your left toe and turn it a little more forward, because obviously if your feet are pointed forward, that's the direction that you're going. There are some stances that they use in various martial arts in which are a little more sideways. Now you can step sideways, but it's a little more difficult to do. This facilitates a fast movement forward and a fast movement back. Okay, now in that position, let's see if you can step forward and back, nice and light, that's it, and forward and back. Keep your knees bent, balls of the feet, forward and back. Now move back again. Okay, now 2 forward, 1, 2. That's it, and back 2, and forward 2, and back 2. All right, that's fine. Now, once you have the techniques down, the next step would be to work with your partner on this. I'll make the first motion as my partner goes back, and then I'll move back and let my partner move forward. So I'm going to step forward, and he moved back, and then I'll move back, and forward, and back, and forward, and back. We want to keep about that same distance between us. Okay, forward and back. Now I'm going to move 2 back this time. 1, 2, and forward. 1, 2, and back. 1, 2, and forward. 1, 2, and back. 1, 2, forward. 1, 2. And then, once we have these basic steps down, it's time to start moving around more in a free form, just trying to move forward and back, using either the left lead or the right lead for this. And we can switch. Okay, we're just moving. Okay, that's good. Next we'll look at the motion laterally, moving right and left. It usually takes many hours to perfect that step forward and back, and it's very important that you put it into actual sparring. This time, instead of the linear step forward and back, we're going to start moving laterally. Sometimes it'll be advantageous to move away from your opponent, and that's to the right and to the left. What we don't want to do is cross our legs. In other words, we don't want to move our back foot that crosses the leg and sets us up for a sweep or a counter or a leg immobilization. What we want to try to incorporate is keeping the feet in a position so that as we step, we're nice and smooth as that. Now, we call that lateral stepping. If you're moving, once again, forward and back, anytime you move forward, move your front foot. Whether it's the right or the left, move your front foot. Anytime you're moving to your right, you should move your right foot first. It's a little step over and then follow up for reposition. Okay, so to move to the right, 1 like that, 1 like that, 1 like that. To move to the left, we'll move the left foot first. 1, 2, and 3. Anytime we're moving to the right, we're going to move our right foot. Anytime we're moving to the left, we're going to move our left foot. And you can incorporate this in the same motion as the forward and back techniques. Let's first of all move to the right, to the left, to the right, to the left. Okay? Now, if I switch over and place my left foot in front, it's the exact same principle. If I'm moving to my left, I'll move my left foot first. If I'm moving to my right, I'm going to move my right foot first. Left, left foot, right, right foot. Switching again, now I'm going to put it back into my motions. Forward, right, forward and back, just putting the techniques together. To the right, to the left, forward, to the right, back, left, forward. Just like that. Full speed. Let's try it this time with our partner. Ian, you'll come in. Let me see you just do the stance first of all. Okay, if you're moving to your right, move your right foot first. That's it. If you're moving to the left, left foot, to the right, and to the left. Okay, now let's try 2 to the right. 1 and 2. And to the left, 1 and 2. Now take your first step to the right and hold that. Now notice at this position, the feet are wider apart and they're open for attack. So it's extremely important that you compensate by pulling the left foot back as fast as possible. Now, we'll try the techniques together. As I move to the right, of course, he'll move to the left. As I move to the left, he'll move his right foot first. So he has to compensate for the fact that we're on opposite sides here. So 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And 1, and 2, and 3, and 4. Like anything, it's easier to be the leader than the follower. We'll switch steps. This time we're going to move to my left first, moving my left foot first, which means that he'll have to move his right first. 1, 2, and to my right. 1, 2, and to my left. 1, 2, and to my right. 1, 2. Now, let's see if we can put this drill together so that we're moving forward and back, left and right. So forward and back, left and right. Forward, back, left, right. Forward, back, left, right. Forward, back, left, right. Okay, and that's how you would practice lateral motion for our stepping and mobility drills. In some arts, it's important to follow exactly the techniques. In Jeet Kune Do, contrary to that, we adapt to the situation. I know that a lot of people in Jeet Kune Do think in terms of using the right or the strong side. In many situations in the Jun Fan kickboxing, we'll find that the left side is equally as important as the right side. What's important is you are able to develop both right side and left side techniques. If that's the case, then we have to have a switch step. We have to have a motion that allows us to move from right lead to left lead fast and efficiently. So what we're going to do is take the right foot. If we're going to switch positions, we take the right foot back, giving ground, giving space, and that space we're going to use quickly as we step over. And so if the front foot is brought back and takes the position of the rear foot then turns quickly around. The reverse foot heel goes off the floor. We step back and across, back and across, back and across, back and across. Now, as you get more advanced, you'll find that there's an extra step in here. You'll step back, position, step back. Now watch my left foot, position. I'll pull this foot back, the front foot back, then I'll place my front foot forward and then reposition my back foot. So I get actually a third or broken rhythm there, a third step. 1, 2. Now this is the beginner step, 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 step. The advance is the step, 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 step. Step, step, step. Once again, in the first stages, as I pick this up, the switch step, I want to just move my front foot back and reverse foot forward, like this. And as I get a little better, I'll find that I want to reposition my back foot. So I want to pull and reposition. hear kind of the cadence as we do that routine. The end result of these mobility exercises is to be able to adapt them for self-defense. And certainly the best way to do that is to get a partner and start moving back and forth in a hands-on positioning. Ian, if you'll come in and let's try these techniques. Now to switch step, you want to move your front foot back out of the way and then switch. And now your front foot back, reverse foot forward. That's it. And forward and back and forward and back. Now, what will happen, Ian, you just stay there for a second, is that in some cases, I'll be in a position, perhaps he'll have a right lead, I'll have a left lead. And what I want to do is switch position, okay, fast and efficient, so that now I can move in and use another technique. In this case, what I wanted to do, I found that I was on unmatched sides here, and I really didn't have my hook kick available to me. So I want to switch position so that now I can throw my hook kick or my forward or lead hand type of technique. So the switch step facilitates that quick little motion back and forth like that. And sometimes we can do it together. Ready? Switch, and switch, and switch, and switch. And that's how we complete the switch step for the Jun Fan kickboxing. This next mobility exercise will allow us to move in an angular fashion outside of the opponent's perimeters, outside of their zone. We do it in the following manner. If we want to move to the right, if your opponent is straight on, instead of moving straight in or straight back or laterally, which puts you still at an opening to your opponent, we're going to try to move 45 degrees away from the opponent. We do that by taking the forward foot and stepping out 45 degrees. Immediately we can switch the step or the direction to put us back at the opposite 45 degrees. Let's look at that. This time we move back and over 45 degrees. This allows us to strike with any type of a punch or kicking type of technique, or we can reposition the kick in that direction. If we want to move in the opposite position, we simply pull back and across. Pull back and over, back and across. And we can put this in our switch step, and then again we're ready to position at 45 degrees. This is very similar to the switch step, except that instead of stepping straight back and forward, I'm stepping back and 45 degrees, stepping back and 45 degrees, stepping back and forward in the switch step, and this time I'm going to step 45 degrees over to avoid a confrontation with my opponent and to put me in a superior position to attack my opponent's weakness. And that's how we complete the angular step in our fighting method. Full speed. This angular stepping is actually more advanced, but still an important part of the actual fight. Ian, if I can use you in here. This time line up right in front of me here, and so that I can kind of show what we're doing. If your opponent is out in front of you and you find that it's not working to simply step back or forward, or if you move over, he follows you, you also have that option of angulating away from him. This way, if I step back and he's coming in, as I step back, filling in that gap, I'll step over out of the way. Now this puts me in a terrific position because here I'm fully prepared to attack my opponent, but he's not in a good position to attack me. Let me show you that one more time. So if I catch my opponent, step right over here, Ian, If I catch my opponent moving back and forth, let's try that, back and forth, and you come in with me, and forward, and this time I'll just step right over out of the way. Let me try that again. Okay, so he comes forward and back and forward, and I just kind of step right out of the way. And that allows me to put in any type of a weapon that I want to from an unguarded position. I want to continually be in position to where I can attack his weaknesses. Go back and let's try that again. This time as I bring him back into me, I'm going to take him back, and then as he comes in, I'll angulate over here. Now watch what I've done at this point. I'm now in position to attack or to strike at even a better angle. So as we come back and forward, I come back and I step over, allowing me to strike my opponent in this position. Okay, so once again, stay right here, Ian. As we're in position here, as he's moving back, what I've done is I've stepped back, I've let him come back, I've brought him in this time, but instead of staying back, I've stepped over out of the way. And as I step out of the way, I'm now in position to attack my opponent. And the exact opposite, if I lead him back into me, I take him back. This time I lead him back into me, but I step over out of the way. Once again, I'm in a superior position to attack my opponent here. And that's what we call angular stepping in our fighting method. The final mobility exercise I'm going to show you is called the pivot step. The pivot step is extremely important for the advanced fighter in that in some cases you'll be in a position to where it's not advantageous to move back or forward or right to the left. You want to pivot out of the way. You want to make a full 90-degree turn. So what I'm doing from this position is I'm taking my front foot and I'm pivoting as much as, it doesn't have to be a full 90 degrees, but as much as 90 degrees, which takes me from this line over to that line. And once again, from position, I'm going from here over to there. From here over to there. Now I can do this on both sides and I can make the full 360 degrees. To do that, Ian, come in. And let me position you to do that. Take your left lead. Okay, so as you would practice this, each time you're moving, as you're looking straight to your opponent, you'd move 90 degrees. Ready? Turn. One. And now turn. And now turn. And turn. And what we're doing, once again, is from the pivot position, we're taking that front foot to pivot with, and we move a full 90 degrees. Again, you can move less than 90 degrees in a lot of situations. Okay, so as he moves, just for practice, he'll move 90 degrees. 1 and 2, nice and quick, and 3 and 4. All right, now switch step, and this time we're going to pull back to his left. Ready? And 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. All right, that's good. All right, Ian, if you'll step right over here, just to show you how this works. All right, as I'm practicing, I'm just going to step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, you see that I used both feet on this. Again, the beginner is just going to be able to make a little pivot, and then as you get more advanced on it, you'll be in position to where you can use both feet to work with you. So not only am I stepping, but I'm repositioning at the same time. Now, I can move back, or I can move around as well. In some cases, I'll find myself just making a little turn like that to reposition to get away from the opponent. And I'll show you how that works. Ian, if you'll come back in and position right here in front of me with the left lead facing me. We had talked about that lateral stepping, so as he comes in, I'll step back, I'll take him back, I'll bring him in once more, and I'm going to laterally step out, not laterally, but angular step out of the way. Once I do that, watch the pivot. The pivot takes me out of position altogether. Once more, as we're moving. As he moves in, I'll angulate my step out of the way. Now this puts me in position, or I could simply pivot out of the way. I want to show that again. As he comes in, I'm stepping out of the way, but instead of simply moving or hitting, I'm just going to take my hand like this and pivot out of position. In tight, if he's coming in tight and he has me in like this, I might simply reposition my feet and then pivot out of the way. And that puts me in a terrific position to counter my opponent's advances. Once more, as he's coming in, I'll step, putting my palm right here against his elbow, I'll pivot out of the way. Okay? And that goes from, Ian, step right over here for a second. All I did was I stepped back, 45 out, and now pivot around. Okay? I step back, 45 out, and pivot around. When we get to the actual sparring, you'll see how we incorporate all of these techniques. Perhaps the best way to actually practice these steps is have a partner come out and throw some punches at you. So in this case, I'm going to have Ian throw some punches light at the stomach, and what I'm going to do is just incorporate forward and back, lateral motion, angular stepping, pivot if it comes. It may not happen, it might happen. Work off the left lead for this, okay, and just throw some punches here. And you can see I'm already angulating out of the way. There's a pivot. Okay, and here I'm moving forward and back. Now he's got the weapon, so he's probably not going to move back a lot, so that I'll end up moving over. But you can see I'm circling. Okay, and if he comes in, there's an angular step out. And now I'm back on this position. Now I'm back across, and all I did was switch and take myself back as we do that. This is a good way to practice these routines. No discussion of strategy is complete without talking about the 5 ways of attack. Now, mobility is essential. Remember, he who controls the distance controls the fight. Mobility allows us to control distance, hence we then control the fight. But as we attempt to hit our opponent, that is, offensively approach our opponent, we need a strategy for doing that. The most simple strategy is what Bruce Lee referred to as a direct attack, a simple direct attack. Ian, if you'll come in for a second, and let me just go through these. Give me a right lead for this. A direct attack is simply we punch straight in or we kick in whatever type we want. Side kick, backhand, whatever technique. That's the most elementary of all attack positions. Most beginners learn a technique and go out and perform a direct attack. A second, slightly more advanced way of approaching the opponent is by combinations. In this case, I throw one technique and a second technique, perhaps even a third technique. Maybe I'm interested in getting my round kick in, so I throw a technique up and hit him, or throw a technique up to get his attention and then follow through with another technique. So I'm working in combinations. I'm working combination techniques together. A double round kick is a combination technique. A straight jab doubled up is a combination technique. Now, combinations are the second level in which people typically work in. They'll do a single technique, and they'll find that they can do secondary techniques as well. In this case, our footwork comes into play, and we'll talk about that later, but our footwork comes into play as we're moving. That was just a switch step. A third method for attacking is called attack by drawing, ABD. Now, you can either draw your opponent in to you by opening up a line, perhaps low in this case, and then countering over the top of it, or high in this case and countering under it. You can draw your opponent into you, or you can draw your opponent out. You draw your opponent out by faking. The fake is the important part here. So we fake a low technique and then hit high. Okay? So we've drawn our opponent down low and then followed up high. A fourth method of attack is called hand immobilization or foot immobilization. A foot immobilization would simply be to immobilize the foot and then follow through with the technique. Or to check the leg and then follow through with the technique. Or, as we'll see again later on, to trap, to immobilize the arm and then follow through with the attack. What we're trying to do is hit our opponent, and we find out that the simple direct attacks don't work, so we have to be more complicated. Then the fifth level, perhaps the most involved, is a broken rhythm called a progressive indirect attack. Here we're changing the speed or direction of the technique. Okay? Now, we might also change the cadence, the rhythm that we're going in. Sometimes I might work with my opponent and just let him see me jabbing in here. He gets used to a slow jab, and then I fire it in fast. Okay? So I've changed the direction, the speed of the technique there, called a progressive indirect attack. This time we're going to break each one of these 5 ways of attack down and show you some drills that you can work on at home. In tape number 1, we picked up the fundamentals, the basic kicks and punches. And to use this strategy of the simple direct attack, we simply insert each of those techniques. For example, if we line up against an opponent and we want to throw a straight lead, just come straight out. You're looking for the attributes of speed and mobility. This is what's going to carry us through on these basic attacks here. If we're looking for a hook kick, it's just thrown out. We can position up, position back. That will encourage our ability to hit. But basically, we're just trying to hit our opponent. Let me get Ian in, and we'll go ahead and show you some of these techniques. And we'll start with the straight lead hand. The straight lead hand is used typically, if he has a right lead, I have a right lead, I want to go straight out at my opponent. So as we move around here, I'm just going to throw a couple. Now, he's not actually throwing techniques. I'm just going to show you how it's done. But as we move around here, we get position. I just throw one low and throw one high. Low and high. The straight punch just kind of goes straight out like that. The second technique that we worked on was called the cross. The cross simply comes from the reverse side. Now, typically, you would not want to throw a cross without sitting up a straight lead. But in this case, since I know he's not going to hit me, I'll just demonstrate that it comes straight out in a cross. The next technique that we looked at was the back fist. As we're moving back and forth with our partner, I just get position and strike. Now, I can increase the effectiveness of this technique by adding a few variations. This technique is thrown straight out to increase the deceptiveness for a direct attack. I can make it non-telegraphic and independent, use the concept of independent motion. Okay, so as I'm moving out, I'm using the weapon first here. Okay, it becomes independent of the rest of the body as we move. So here's my back fist, and I want to throw it, and I just hit out like that. Okay, and again, these are all direct attacks. The hook works the same way as I move in, as does the uppercut. Now, an uppercut would not be the type of technique that I would throw as a direct attack, typically. Okay, but here is the techniques thrown. If we're sparring, just direct attacks. We're moving around, and notice that I'm just throwing direct attacks. Okay, now if I'm very fast, very powerful, it might be that these techniques will work for me. Just throwing direct attacks. There's the side kick. There's the inverted hook kick. There's the oblique kick to try to hurt the knee. Straight punch back. Straight punch low. I'm just using the direct attacks. Notice there's no combinations, not a whole lot of motion. I'm just moving with the techniques. Right now, thanks, Ian. The problem, of course, with the direct attack is it's easy for your opponent to pick up on it, and then they're able to block or counter or move out of the way. So we need to go to a more sophisticated method of striking. Attack by combination is a slightly more advanced routine that we use in terms of fighting. Now, each fighter develops a series of combinations that they prefer. For example, you might find one person who likes to double up on the jab. That just seems to be their favorite combination. Another person might like a jab hook as their basic combination. Another person might like a front kick, get them down low, and then follow through with a reverse punch. Bruce Lee was well known for a combination called the straight blast, or in other martial arts we refer to it as the blitz, from the German word blitzkriegen, meaning total power. Use all of your forces to take the person down. In doing that, we place one hand out, and the next hand comes over the top like that. This is called the straight blast. I want to teach this first. We start with a right lead. We follow with the left hand. Now notice that the hands go straight in front like that. Some people kind of punch at an angle like this, and that's all right. And some people punch more straight, and that works too. But as we do it, we just take our fighting position. We'll punch 1, 2, 3. Now we're going to try those 3 punches moving forward. 1, 2, 3. We're just going to use that footwork that we went over at the beginning, using this combination that we're going to call the straight blast. So we're in fighting position. 1, 2, 3. Now notice that as I step forward with the right foot, I do my first straight lead. My left punch comes in as I'm sliding up, and then I follow with my third punch on my step. So once again, I'll throw 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try that again. Here we go. 1, 2, 3. And once more, 1, 2, 3. This combination works very efficiently. In some cases, we might want to incorporate a switch step on this and then follow through. So what that does is change the direction. So we step and follow through. Step and follow through. And step and follow through. Now I'm going to show you that combination with Ian. Ian, if you'll come in just for a second, I'll go ahead and put on these gloves. And as we're performing these techniques, I want to make just a little bit of light contact toward the head for this. Now, again, we tried the direct attack first of all. That would be just one technique. When we found that that didn't work very well, the direct attack, then we want to go in combinations. We want to overpower our opponent using the blitz. That's to overpower the opponent with too many punches so they really can't follow through. Now watch what happens. Come this way, Ian, just a little. Okay, the first method was to step 1, 2, 3. Let's try that one. As we just kind of standing here, and Ian, I want you to step back if you need to. Okay, 1, 2, 3, like that. Here we go again. 1, 2, 3 on the straight blast. 1, 2, 3 on the blast, and 1, 2, 3 on the blast. The second method that I showed you was to switch the steps. Now what that does is allows my opponent to feel comfortable that I'm not moving in. So I'm moving back and forth as we go there. As we step. As we step. As we step. So using that straight blast was a very popular combination of routines for Bruce Lee. Now in addition to this combination of straight punches, we can also put in other combinations. For example, a good combination is to double up on the hook, throwing it low, then throwing it high against the opponent. As we move around, I throw it low, high combination. Low, high combination. Another combination to use would be a jab and hook. On the jab, we draw the opponent up, so they have to cover out in front, and we hook around to the side. As we're moving, jab and hook the opponent. Come right back here, Ian. As we're moving, we jab and then hook the opponent over. Jab and hook the opponent over. If we start looking at some of the kicking techniques that we could use, I'll start out with just a front kick. Okay, and in some cases I'll throw a front kick and a second front kick. Okay, so a front kick, second front kick. These are combinations that I would use. Front kick, second front kick. In this case, I'm going to throw a reverse front kick. Maybe I have the distance there. So I'll throw a reverse front kick followed by a round kick, or what we usually refer to as a hook kick. Okay, front kick, hook kick. We're moving around. I'll throw a front kick, hook kick. And once more, front kick, hook kick. One of the basic combinations used by a lot of fighters is to double up on the hook kick. So we simply throw it out double, like that. Sometimes they'll throw it out and just continue to hit with the hook kick. Seems to be a very effective combination. Another combination that a lot of people like to use is the back fist, side kick. Okay, so as you're moving, we throw a back fist, and as the person moves back, a side kick. Once again, move around, back fist, side kick combination. Now, you just have to experiment with these techniques and find out what works best for you in combination attack. Once again, most fighters seem to have a preference for this combination or that combination. The best way to develop these combinations for your own benefit is to get a partner and use some light to very little contact type of sparring where we're just kind of moving around, taking turns throwing some techniques. Now I'm going to try to keep it simple and work only on combinations, but notice the footwork that sets up the combinations as we move. I won't be talking through this typically, but we'll just be moving around here. Okay? And I'm going to start off, obviously, with a kick because I see that opening there. Now, we're actually doing direct attacks at this time. And a lot of times you will begin a fight by doing those direct attacks. In this case, you saw the inverted hook and the jab going back. And you see the opening there that I'm using as a reference. And once again, the direct attacks seem to be very useful here against my opponent. Now it was just a blitz to overwhelm the opponent throwing combinations. It doesn't have to be a combination of two. It can be a combination of 3 techniques, or 4, or 5. Our objective for this next way of attack is to, again, increase speed, increase power, or deceptiveness. Now, the first 2 ways of attack, direct attack and attack by combination, if we increase the speed, we're going to get a more effective routine. If we can increase our power on a direct attack, if a person comes out and we have such a powerful sidekick that we just blast through them, they can block it or whatever, we're still effective on it. But let's say that you don't have the speed and power, but you can increase your deceptiveness, the ability to move around the opponent so that they think one thing is coming. It looks like an easy opportunity, but you're able to capitalize on that. So attack by drawing is your ticket. Now, by attack by drawing, we're actually creating an opening so our opponent can come in. We want to make them think that we're not prepared, or we want to cause the person, draw them out so that we can move in against them. In this case, we're going to look at the fake, the body fake. There are 2 types of fakes that we use typically. One is an arm or leg fake. For example, if we're trying to throw a back fist, we throw the back fist, that's the actual technique. If we're trying to fake with a back fist, we have to have enough of a fake, a feint or fake, whatever you want to call it, so that the opponent buys it. If we start faking and they don't move at all, we're in a problem, because their attack by drawing combination, or attack by drawing technique, is not going to work for us. So as we're moving here, let's look at those 2 types of faking techniques. First of all, if you're going to kick, you need to chamber, or you need to pick up position for the foot or the hand. Let's try that a couple times. A typical faking technique for a back fist would look like this. You'll move your hand back, and you want to get it across to your opponent that you are going to hit them. You're drawing them out. You're pulling them up here and getting them to try to evade that technique. The second is the body fake, the full body fake. On the full body fake, we're moving our whole body in. So as we're moving against the opponent, the whole body comes in for the fake. Now, sometimes we'll put our hands out or put our hands low, but we're actually causing the opponent to work because the entire body's moving in here. Ian, if you'll come forward, I want to demonstrate that. Just a little. Face this camera right here in front. And as you're moving back and forth, and I'll talk over on this direction, as you're moving back and forth, let's see just some arm fakes. Ready as you're moving, just kind of fake with the hands. That's it. Now you want to put a little bit more into it. You want to get across to the opponent that the attack is coming. That's it. A little more power into the fake. That's right. The fake has to be the exact type of technique as the real thing. In order to pull them out, you have to fake them into it. Okay, now let's see a body type of fake. Whole body. That's it. Now, once you throw it in, you have to get it back so that you're ready to counter. That's it. You're drawing them in there. Good. All right? Now, here's how it would work against an opponent. Ian, if you'll position right here. Now, if I'm trying to get my opponent this opening high, I may want to try and fake down low. So I'll try this kick, for example, stepping and acting like I'm going to hit so that I can then counter up high. So my ABD attack, my attack by drawing, is to draw the opponent down so that I can then hit high. It's really that simple. So as I'm moving here against my opponent, there's my fake, and there's my hit. I'm moving here, here's my fake, and there's my hit. Now, if I don't have a strong enough fake, in other words, if my fake looks like this, my opponent doesn't react to it. So I haven't really accomplished anything there. So I have to sit out a fake that my opponent will see and actually go for. Anytime that we're doing a technique that's coming in, we have to get across to the opponent that they're going to be hit. If they feel like they're not going to be hit, a lot of times they'll just move and watch you through the technique, and that doesn't do you any service there. So as we go through these techniques, let's try the first one, faking low, hitting high. Okay, so as you position against your opponent, you've got to step and throw out a technique that's going to be strong enough to get your opponent to move. So here we are moving. I throw out the technique without actually hitting. It makes him move. Throwing out the technique, making him move. Now I also have to have a speed and delivery. Once I throw the technique out, I have to quickly counter with my technique. So as we're moving, I can't afford to throw out my fake and get him to react and then not follow up. So I've got to step out, fake and hit quickly and efficiently. Fake and hit like that. Now once I get the fake down, I can fake up high and hit low. In this case, especially useful for self-defense, I'm throwing my hand out, and this is incorporating the whole body. As I step out into him, and then hitting low. So as we're moving, I'm faking high and hitting low. And faking high and hitting low. And that's a good way to use the faking techniques to draw the person in. So another method for using attack by drawing is to create an opening. Now, when you create an opening, a lot of times you're simply taking your defense and lowering your defense so that the opponent, it looks like you're wide open. When your opponent goes to hit, then you're in a position to counter your opponent. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to take that technique coming in and counter, either by attacking the limb or attacking the actual body. So if I feel confident that I can move before he hits me, I may put my hands down. I may just move around, allow my opponent to try what he wants to. As he tries, I'm setting up the ability to kick low or punch to counter the opponent. So in this case, I'm drawing my opponent in as I move, drawing my opponent in, and then countering underneath. As I draw him in, I counter underneath. As I draw him in, I counter underneath once more, and counter underneath. Or I may create an opening low. In this case, if he were throwing, say, a round kick, give me a left lead. If he's throwing a reverse leg round kick, and I have an opening here, I threw it in there just so I could capture and counter. So in this case, I know he's a hard kicker. I just take that leg and sweep, and I can take him down or whatever I want to do there. So I may keep up high, okay, and draw him down low so he sees that, capturing that leg, boom, I'm in terrific position to follow through. So an attack by drawing, we can both draw the opponent out, make them move, okay, by creating a fake, a counterfeit technique. We draw them out. Or we can draw the opponent into us by creating an opening that he can't avoid, and then we follow through with a counter. That's how we use attack by drawing. I want to look this time at some practical applications for the attack by drawing method. Now remember, we're either going to try to draw the opponent into us by creating an opening, a false opening by the way, or we're going to try to draw him out by firing a technique that he has to try to block or defend against. Ian, come on in, and let's give this a try. Now, obviously it's going to be difficult to just kind of talk about it when you know I'm going to try to fake you and then try to get you faked. So we'll just move around here a little, and perhaps you can work on the cues. You see a hit opening here, so I'll just try to hit the hand. In this case, I'm just destructing as we move around here. Okay. Sometimes as I move to the person, I'll try to fake them low and hit high. Okay. So here again, here's trying to fake him to get him to go there, and then hit high on. So I'm trying to draw him out as I do these routines here. There you go. I actually drew you in on that one. And back again. And back. And just kind of holding on as I move it through here. One of the techniques that I prefer is to draw the punch in and then attack the bicep as we go through this. And that's a very effective technique to stop the opponent. Now, the same thing is true if we get the person punching at us and we're hitting. We can hit into the hand, into the bicep. Or obviously if he's punching, we just kind of hold on and hit. But we get that by creating an opening in our attack by drawing method. Now, sometimes you lose the spontaneity of the actual defense when you're trying to demonstrate these things in fairly slow speed. But the attack by drawing is the most important method of fighting. The hand immobilization attack is something else developed by Bruce Lee and perhaps popularized by his method of Jeet Kune Do. By hand immobilization, HIA, we're talking about actually immobilizing the arm, or FIA, the foot, to stop the foot or stop the hand. Now, Ian, come in for a second. If the person's going to hit you and you immobilize their weapons, then they don't have anything to hit you with. Also, we can use this immobilization to set up an opening to hit the opponent. So either we are neutralizing their offense by using the trapping method, or we're actually trying to hit the person. And here are some of the typical methods used. For example, in a lot of Jeet Kune Do, we have the next tape, tape 3 on HIA, hand immobilization attacks, so there'll be certainly a lot of discussion about that in the next tape series. But just to show you how it's going to work, we start from an obstruction position here. In other words, I tried to hit him, he stopped it, and I can't get through it. So what I'm going to try to do is stop this and then hit my opponent. So just moving in like that. This is called a Pak Sao. We also can pull the hand down, called a Lap Sao, and hit as well. So against an opponent, if I'm just moving in, I can pull it back and hit, or I can pocket and hit. I can also Jiao Sao, that is, run inside of the hand and move it back to strike my opponent as well. By using this type of immobilization attack, it really sets up a lot of openings for me. There are different types of trapping techniques. If the person's punching in, I can redirect, and then I'm in position to hit my opponent. Okay? If he's punching again, I can come to the inside, and once again, I'm in position to just continue following through with a series of offensive strikes. And I'm able to do that because of the HIA method, the ability to immobilize that arm and then move in. Now, some of the other ways that work for this is to use a destruction, and I demonstrated that just a few seconds ago. If I get my opponent to punch at me, I can attempt to destruct or destroy that arm. I could even, for example, reach out and hit the arm, hitting the arm, making it hurt, and then follow through with an attack. So that could actually be my attack method right there to strike. The same thing is true for the kicking techniques. If I strike to the leg, immobilizing the leg, then I'm in position to follow through with any number of techniques here. If we're moving around, you probably don't want to do this when you're sparring, but as you're moving around, any type of a strike to the opponent stops him. Now, some of the ways to do that, to immobilize the leg or arm, include destructions. If my opponent were doing a front kick at me, I just drop my elbow straight down to hit. So as the front kick comes up, I'm just hitting, whoop, made some contact there, didn't I? As far as the round kick is concerned, typically on the round kick, if you're kicking at me, I'll try to capture the round kick. Again, I've immobilized it for a second, which allows me to follow up with the next technique. In this case, it might be a takedown. It might be a groin strike. I might just hit my opponent. But what I've done is immobilize the leg in order to strike. So what I'm thinking of in my strategy is, how can I get to the person? One way to do that is through immobilization, the trapping. If the person is coming up and throwing perhaps a side kick, again, that same type of technique. A higher side kick into the body, I can come right up under it to hit my opponent. So what I'm trying to do, once again, is destroy through this type of attack. And the end effect is that I've immobilized his offense. Immobilized his offense. So as we go through these routines, I'm going to have Ian move around just a little with a few punches, and I'll just show you how they work. You just throw a straight punch out. And then in. Okay, this time, Ian, I'll just reference point, put your arm up, and I'm going to throw a right across, and I'll show how that works. I'll come in, and once I do that, I'm in position to move right into my opponent. Okay, so if you're practicing the HIA method, this type of immobilization works terrific for you. In the progressive indirect, we try to have a change up in either speed or direction. Now, what we mean by that is assuming that a punch is coming in at full speed, well, it's easy for an opponent to kind of react to that. In other words, he sees it and he gets used to it. But what happens if it appears that your punch is coming in slow and then speeds up? It's a change up in the speed. It makes it much more difficult to stop that type of attack. So what we're going to work on is getting these techniques down to where we're changing up the speed of the technique. A round kick that looks like it's going to start out slow, then speeds up at the end. A jab that looks like it doesn't have much on it, and then all of a sudden you step in and hit. Let's try first of all using the straight lead, which is a major weapon in Jeet Kune Do. By taking our on-guard position, we're just moving back and forth. And what we do is just start out with a jab. We're kind of feeling the distance, kind of getting the person to react to it, and they see the jab coming out. And the minute they get used to that jab coming out, then we change up. We step in a little bit faster. We blast the technique in a little bit faster. So what we're trying for is a change in speed there. Okay, so let's look at this technique. So here we are. We're moving. 1, we move around. 2, and then 3. So we've really kind of changed the rhythm. Once more. You can see it coming out. There's 1. There's 2. And then there's 3. See, it doesn't have the same timing on it. You can do that for kicks and punches. You could start out a slow kick and then follow through with a very fast punch. Okay? But the component that sets the PIA off is a change in speed or direction. Ian, let me have you in here. And position right over here. Okay, give me a right lead. And now, again, I want you to just move around as I talk. Okay, if you'll notice that here's my punch, and you can see him just kind of get used to it. Okay, but that one was a little bit faster. I don't have to go always on 3s, but 3 seems to be a good opportunity to get him used to it. I could, for example, start the punch halfway and then speed it up. In other words, I'm starting the punch, you can see it coming out, and then it's a little bit faster as it goes through. As we're moving around here, here's my PIA attack. I'm just changing the speed of the technique. Okay, same thing is true for the hook kick or a round kick. Okay, I started out kind of slow like this, and then boom, get it in faster. I pick it up, and then boom, get it in much faster. You can see once again where I'm picking it up and then speeding it up at the last few seconds, as opposed to just clocking the technique out. In this case, I'm kind of sitting up, getting him used to it, letting him think that the technique isn't coming that fast, it's not going to be that strong, and at the last part of it, I really blast it in like that. Okay, so as we're moving around here, once again, I'm just following through with the technique. Now, in the PIA, we can also change the direction of the technique. For example, it might appear in this type of a technique where I'm going to kick low and then kick high. So I've just changed my direction there. Okay, so as we're moving, it looks like I'm going to throw a low hooking kick to the body, and I just pick it up high. Let me do this for the camera. Looks like I'm just throwing a low kick, and then I'll pick it up high. If you watch, here comes low, and then up high for the technique. Here it comes again, low, and then up high. Now, I'm not actually throwing a faking technique. What I'm throwing is a progressive indirect. I'm letting the technique look like it's starting slow, and the direction appears to be low. It looks like this technique is going to hit him low. And in fact, if it were a direct attack, it would hit low. But in this case, I'm going to change up the direction. So what looks low ends up much higher for him. As I move around, and then I hit much higher with the technique. Once again, low, and then high with the technique. Now, I could start off, for example, give me a left lead. I could start off a front kick and change it into an inverted hook kick. Now watch how I do that. Sometimes I'll work with my opponent out, and they'll see one technique coming up and then switching it in. So here's the front kick coming up, switched in to the hook kick. So I didn't actually throw a fake. In other words, I didn't actually throw a front kick combination hook kick. What I did was set up my hook kick so it changed directions. And I'll use that quite a bit in sparring. As we move around, I'm just kind of coming up and across like that. Moving around, up and across. Now you notice that it varies from the actual hook kick. Inverted hook kick, which would come up and tap in like that. This time it's coming up and across. Up and then across. Instead of coming simply up and out, this hook kick is coming up and then out. It's changing the direction of the technique. Now, if we do that in a hand type of skill, I may throw like a faking type of technique to kind of get his attention and see what he's going to do. Now watch, I'm going to change up the direction of the punch. This time I'm going to take my jab and change it into a hook, just like that. It looks like I'm going low with it, but then I change up the direction of the technique. low to high. In this case, low to high. Progressive indirect attack. I'm progressing from one position to another, so I'm trying to strike this area in an indirect manner. And I got there by changing the direction of the technique. So you can put those types of things together. Now let's go back to the straight blast that we started with the combination attack. If we find that even in combination the straight blast doesn't work, we can change up the speed and integrity of the attack. And here's how we do it. Just stay there in the left lead. Okay, now, let's say that we tried this basic position here. You move back with me. Okay? Here's the basic straight blast. That was actually a foot immobilization attack there too, wasn't it? Okay, here's the straight blast coming in. Now, that would be the standard, the first way to use it. As you get a little more specialized, a little more advanced, you find out that you can switch steps and move that much more effectively. And in this case, what I'm going to do is start my technique out, and then, by changing the speed, follow through. Now watch what I did. It looks like I'm going to throw the right punch here, but what I did was actually throw the left. Okay, now let me make that clear. Typically, if I were to start out the straight blast technique with a straight punch and follow through, that would be the textbook case there. But in this case, what I did is pull my hand back, and really, with my power and speed, I changed up so I'm actually hitting him with the left. So the right technique gave way to the left technique, which allows me even more speed on the front technique. Okay? So in this case, here's the right lead, followed with a reverse cross, and then I have still another cross. Now look what happens. Instead of simply stepping in, 1, 2, 3, what I did was I pulled back and fired more power on the reverse. Okay, Ian, I'm going to throw a few at you as we move around. Here we're moving. You can throw some at the stomach if you want to. And anytime I find a little pause here, I'll go ahead and try to blast in. Okay, go ahead and try to block these so you don't just get hit. Okay, and what I'm doing here, I'm faking low and then following through. So I was able to get my straight blast in by using that drawing, the faking method here. Okay. And once again, I'll just keep going there with that blasting technique. And I'm moving back and forth. I just fired a direct attack at my opponent. Just kind of get the range. In this case, I'm just going to double up on the technique because I see the opening. This time I'll double up on the technique, and then once I double up, if he's still there, I'll go with my blast. And of course, he's still there. So I'll follow through with the blast. So you can see, by putting these different ways of attack together, it increases their ability to score against their opponent. In 1989, I introduced the principle of the Jeet Kune Do matrix to Inside Kung Fu magazine. Now, every competition, and certainly self-defense, is a competition in which two fighters attempt to struggle until one person walks away the winner, the other lays there the loser. Every competition has three variables. Their strategy, attributes, and chance. Now, chance is something we can't plan for. It's luck. Two fighters go into a ring, one slips and falls down on a piece of paper that a spectator had thrown into the ring. Hurts his knee. That's bad luck. We can't do anything about that. Attributes, on the other hand, include such variables as speed and power, tenacity, and intensity. We can certainly program for that. We can do techniques and such that would increase our speed and our power. There are a lot of tapes and such on the market that deal with the Jeet Kune Do attributes. The third element is strategy. That's what this tape was about. What is your plan of action? The plan of action for Taekwondo is to kick. The plan of action for Judo is to get the person down on the floor. The plan of action for boxing is to punch with the hands. The problem comes in when your plan of action, your strategy, doesn't match your attributes. Let's say a person wants to be a terrific basketball player and they're watching a basketball game. Notice that the person that goes up and takes the ball and slam dunks it through the net is the one that gets the most points. So they decide, that's going to be my plan of action. That's going to be my strategy. But in reality, they stand only 5'2". They don't have the attribute of height that's necessary to carry out that plan of action. So we have to pick those arts that make it functional for us. If we have the attribute of flexibility, we can certainly perform Taekwondo. If we don't like getting hit in the head, then stay away from boxing unless you're willing to put in the time to make it work for you. In the matrix, we have the opportunity to conceptually examine each of these different ranges and how they can be used to help us better prepare for the combat arena. Now, it's often said that Bruce Lee, who of course was the creator of Jeet Kune Do, combined elements of Wing Chun Kung Fu with various grappling methods, most designed around the Judo, Jiu-Jitsu format, along with the Western boxing. He was very influenced by Western boxing, the footwork, the mobility, in and out, the jab. Muhammad Ali was one of his favorite fighters, and various forms of Gong Fu or Kung Fu as we write it here, the Northern Shaolin and such for the kicking techniques. So, assuming that this is the components of your matrix, what you'll have is, using the Wing Chun, covers the trapping range. You'll be functional at trapping range here. If you understand the Judo, that would be the grappling range. So if you're caught in a grappling position, then having this information allows you to operate in grappling. Now, when they first started the Ultimate Fighting Championships in this country, most of the fighters had no idea that they would eventually end up on the ground. Our fighters in this country, coming from boxing and karate and such, were simply unprepared to go into that type of arena, get taken to the ground, and then they didn't know what to do. They were helpless. Match a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert against a boxer, and the minute the fight goes to the ground, you have a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu expert versus a man on the ground. Boxing doesn't have very much relevance when it's on the ground. Some years earlier, when we had the full contact fighting in this country, the kickboxing was first introduced. Most of the traditional karate and Taekwondo practitioners had no idea about in close, the trapping, the boxing range, and they were completely unprepared. At long range, they could kick, but in close, they simply were too much of a standing target for the well-trained boxer, kickboxer. So we have to have each of these elements in our matrix in order to be effective at self-defense. The next art was the boxing. Now, boxing is perhaps the best art available for punching range. The boxers literally make millions and millions of dollars. So they can pick any art and hire the services of any master in order to teach them to do the best punching techniques possible. And certainly they're able to do that through the boxing. And then finally, the Kung Fu we're going to put at long range, realizing that there are various methods of Kung Fu that stress in close or ground fighting and various pressure points and such. But Kung Fu, like a karate, we're going to put at long range. For this reason, the fighter now has success at grappling range if he's matched on the floor, at trapping range if it's in close, standing up, at punching range if it's a medium distance, and at long range if it's kicking. Now, your matrix may be very different from Bruce Lee's or some other individual. For example, instead of Wing Chun at trapping, you may practice a Filipino martial art such as Kali, or you may use the Okinawan Goju that has a lot of the trapping techniques in it. Instead of Judo, you may go to the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or basic wrestling. There are quite a few wrestlers that are becoming very effective in terms of combat usage. Boxing, it would be hard to beat boxing, but any type of a punching technique that would give you that format would be functional for you. And then, of course, at long range, Thai boxing, karate, Taekwondo would give you the kicking expertise that you need. Now, once again, there'll be individuals that would say, my Thai boxing also works at punching range and trapping range, and we can even do some grappling from that. That's fine. But for most of us, each art represents an individual range. And remember, we said that for a lot of classical martial artists, their identity is recognized in their limitations. They're limited at kicking range. They're limited at punching range or trapping or grappling. Now, once we get into reality fighting, once we put on the gloves and we throw away all of the kata and the cultural norms that exist in a classical martial art, we find out that we actually only have 3 ranges. Those ranges include kickboxing range. When you're standing up at a distance or even a medium distance, you're basically kickboxing. Any different way of kicking doesn't really matter. You may have 4 or 5 arts up here that you've learned your kicking from. You may have Savate, you may have karate, you may have a kung fu, you may have a Wing Chun. You've learned all sorts of different kicking skills, but ultimately you're in kickboxing range, and that's what it's going to come down to. When you're in close, you may have learned a lot of different trapping skills, a lot of different boxing skills, elbows, knees, and such, but ultimately, when you throw out all the descriptions and the limitations, you're going to be in a combination of trapping and boxing range. Trapping means to grapple with the hands, to immobilize and grapple with the hands. So you are combining the boxing, the in-close boxing, with the trapping techniques, hence the word trap boxing. And then, if you go to the ground and you're basically a stand-up fighter, you want to go into a mounted position and attempt to get the opponent to submit through punching. So we sometimes call that submission boxing on the ground. So typically in a street fight scenario or even in a full contact practice match, you're going to be going from the kickboxing range to the trap boxing range to the submission boxing range. And a lot of practitioners who want to invest some time in this will cancel out one of these. For example, they'll only do the stand-up fighting and not be involved in the ground fighting. Now, Jeet Kune Do is not really about moving from art to art. That's one way that we could look at it in a manner in which we're trying to practice or put together the skills. But what we're really trying to get to in Jeet Kune Do is picking out certain techniques that we want to use. We're chipping away the non-essentials. We want to get our art down to a few kicks and a few punches and a few grappling techniques in which we are sure of them. And then how do you make them work? Well, you don't toss out the technique. If your jab isn't working, you don't throw out the jab and then go into another technique. Change the angle or change the way of attack. If you can't make your jab work on a straight, linear, simple direct attack, then change to a combination attack. Change to a progressive indirect attack. That's how you make it work. That's the strategy for Jeet Kune Do. Now, when Bruce Lee used to talk about chipping away the non-essentials, that's exactly what he was talking about. Let's get down to a few basic techniques that work, that you can stand by, and that you know. You put in the time. Then let's go back to our strategy and attributes. If your strategy is to use the jab and the hook and such techniques as that, and you develop the attributes to make that work, the speed, the power, and the deceptiveness, then your skill is going to work under any situation. Whether you are confronted in kicking, punching, tramping, or grappling, it just takes a few techniques to put together a terrific, what we would call a scientific street fighting method. Thanks for watching tape number 2 on the strategy in Jeet Kune Do. In tape number 3, we're going to further look at the HIA method, the hand immobilization attack, as we look at different methods for trapping in Jeet Kune Do. This is tape number 3 in our series on Jeet Kune Do scientific street fighting. My name is Jerry Beasley. I'll be your instructor. In this tape, we're going to look at HIA, hand immobilization attack. How do you stop the opponent in close? We're looking toe-to-toe this time. Most of the stand-up arts work at a distance. We want to be some distance away to kick, to punch. But what happens when you're confronted by an individual who's standing right in your face? This is trapping range. There are certain techniques that we have to pick up, certain weapons that we want to perfect as we develop expertise in HIA range, hand immobilization attack. For most of us in the stand-up arts, if we're at a long range here, we feel very comfortable. This gives us the distance in which we're ready to throw our normal long-range attacks, either through punching or kicking. But what happens when the opponent is up here in your face? That's what we have to be concerned about in this particular section. There are different weapons that we're going to use. For example, we might use the elbow. We might use the knee. We might use the headbutt. We might use different types of pinching or striking techniques, hair pulling, stomping techniques, anything that works in close that you typically couldn't use at a distance. At this distance, you wouldn't attempt to throw an elbow or a knee type of a strike. At this distance, you probably wouldn't try a stomping technique. But in close, when your kicking is too far away, that's when you need to use these close-in type of techniques for you. And so in this tape, what we're going to do is break down each individual technique and show you how it's applied. Let's look at the elbow for the first technique. Now, we want to hit with the hard part of the elbow here. In the typical karate, taekwondo type of art, the fist is tight, and we hit and we pull back. That's that kind of energy. Now, we don't have that energy so much here in the Junfan kickboxing. What we're trying to do is more of the Thai boxing type of elbow. Now, if you're practicing Jeet Kune Do, it may be in your matrix that we talked about in the last tape that you've used some Thai boxing. But once you put it into your individual expression in Jeet Kune Do, forget that it's Thai boxing. That's a word that has the limitations of the art that you used to service. Now you're JKD. That's beyond any specific art. So now my elbow is simply what works for me. And in this case, it may resemble an art, but it has nothing to do with that art. So here we go. The elbow comes across like this. We're nice and relaxed as we throw it. The forward hand, the forward part of the hand here is just relaxed. We just shoot it across. It's the same as we throw our right cross, just like that, except we're hitting with the elbow. Hitting with the elbow. Now remember that in the right cross in tape number 1, it was important to keep your elbow in and down. And now we're going to throw this elbow technique, but putting the elbow up. You want to make sure that you're not throwing your right cross with your elbow up, but rather you're throwing your cross down and the elbow up. At this point, we're looking solely at the elbow, but I wanted to make sure that you understood the difference in the two. The same mechanics relate to the shoulder coming in and the hip coming in, and that's when you can drive some power. And once again, when we were looking at those fundamental techniques, we found that we could step forward with the body, we could torque and drop the body weight down, and that's what we're going to do with this elbow. So to get our power, we take this elbow stepping out and twisting it down, out and twisting it down, out and twisting it down. You can see that the shoulder's going into it. You can see that the hip's going into it. You can see that the body weight is dropping to give you that power, just like that, just like that. Now I'm letting my hand just hit, just for the effect, but I'm just hitting out like this and back, out like that and back. Now this first technique is just going straight across with my elbow in that manner. This time, let's look at the elbow technique against the focus pad. Ian, if you'll bring the focus pad in, I'll put it up here, and you take a left lead, and we're just going to try this. First of all, let's see how a karate practitioner would typically throw it, making a hard fist and a cross and back. Now, you can see you get maximum power. Okay, and see how the body weight is coming in, and the knees are being dropped here, and the arm is locking out. Okay, now the problem with that is you don't have a follow-up technique. Remember that in a lot of the stand-up arts, the karate, the taekwondo, what we're really doing is throwing the technique and that's it. It's one shot and the fight should be over. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work like that. So what we've done here is we've tightened the technique up so we get more of a snap. Hit it. And he's kind of reaching that time. Hit. And then pull back. Okay, and see if you can get that right knee to come over and drop just a little bit more to give you more power with your technique. 1. That's better. And 2. And 3. And this left hand can be kept up a little bit higher as we're striking with that. 1. And 2. And be sure to pull it back quickly. That's an important part of it. 1. And 2. And 3. Okay? And that's the basic elbow strike that we would use in our method here. In addition to our basic elbow strike here, we can use that elbow off the forward side by twisting like this. A lot of times you'll be in close to the opponent and you want to twist off the forward side. It's a lot like our hooking punch in that we want to, again, twist the hips, twist the shoulder, get the body weight in on it. So we're just going to strike across like that. This left hand comes up for protection. The right elbow comes up and you're just hitting across like that. The shoulder's up for protection. You want to quickly come back and cover the ribs. So on this forward elbow, we're just coming up and across like that. Up and across with it. Up and across. Up and across. Now remember, there are different ways to throw the elbow. Ultimately, you have to find out what type of elbow technique works for you. It's important to be able to throw it correctly, but it's more important to be able to hit the person with it. So that's what we're doing, coming across and hitting. Now, one other variation I want to go ahead and show you is sometimes referred to as a down elbow. We come more down on the opponent as opposed to straight across like this. So we come up and down on the elbow. We're just dropping our weight. And you can actually get more body weight on this since you're dropping down like that. Dropping down on the technique. Dropping down. So at this point, we can throw our regular elbow, our forward elbow, and our down elbow. And a 1, 2, and 3. And notice the position for the hips. And 1, we twist in. And 2, we torque back. And 3, we come down. And 1, and 2, and 3. And from fighting position, and 1, and 2, and 3. And from fighting position, 1, 2, 3. Just like that. Okay? 1. Full speed. Okay, the down elbow, slow speed. Full speed. The fundamentals of the elbow strikes are very similar to the jab, cross, hook that we'd already worked on. Ian, come on out here, and let's get you to try some of these techniques. And now, first of all, let's try that forward elbow strike. Now, on the forward elbow strike, you want to see your hip turn into it. You want to see the hand back in nice and relaxed. Ready? And 1, and 2, and 3. Right, now, notice that his hip's coming straight around, his hand's coming back to protect those ribs quickly, and also a little bit more hip into it and knee into it this time. Ready? 1, and 2, good, and 3. Terrific. Let's try the down elbow this time. On the down elbow, that'll be out in front of us, and you want to come across, and 1, that's it, a little bit too far away, and 2, and 3. Let's go ahead and turn this knee forward a little bit more and get that left hip into it a little bit more. Ready? And 1, that's it, and pull back quickly, and 2, that's it. Let's turn this around, and 3. All right, this time we're going to try some combinations. So we'll start out with the reverse elbow, the forward elbow, and the down elbow. Let's do that again nice and slow. We're going to start out with the reverse, and notice that as he does the reverse, just hold it out there. Okay, he's in just a terrific position to throw this forward elbow. So I'll put the focus pad up, and he'll hit, and now he's ready to come down with the reverse elbow. The down elbow. Here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, and 3. Let's try it again. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Okay, let's try it again. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. All right, this time again, let's try it real fast. So 1, 2, 3, just like that. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Good. Let's try it again. Here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3. Good job. And that's how we train for these elbow strikes. In addition to the elbow techniques, the knees are terrific for in-close fighting. The knee techniques generally are just brought up. It's all you have to do on the knee. Typically in the structured arts or classical art, the knee is brought up and then pulled back. But in our particular art, the kickboxing, if you'll take the knee up and then push the hips in, just like you were doing that front thrusting kick that we worked on in tape 1. Coming up and across is the same basic principle. You get the hip into it, and that's where your power is coming from. So the knee comes up and then you're pointing it in, up and in like this. And notice the hands are being used to pull the opponent into you. Typically, if you can grab onto that neck or upper body or collar or something so you can pull them in and drive that knee tight in against the opponent like that. So you're grabbing and you're pulling in and driving your knee up. Grabbing, pulling in and driving your knee up for that. And this is the reverse knee technique. Now, full speed. Let's go to the focus pads and try out these knees for real. As my opponent comes in, and Ian, I'm going to have you hold the focus pads this time. What I want to do, I'm typically not going to throw my knee at a distance like this, although that'll work sometimes. The problem would be if I throw it out that far, my opponent could easily block it or grab it. And so I typically want to be in close if I'm going to throw a knee attack. Now, if I happen to approach the opponent from this position, I'm just going to incorporate that switch step back, and then there's my knee strike. There's my knee strike. If I happen to be on the right lead and I want to throw a reverse knee, I'll just switch step and then drive the knee straight in, just like that. Driving the knee in. Now, I can also use the knee off the forward side. Once I have my opponent, I might be grabbing like this, or around the neck would be my best bet. Putting both hands together works. Putting hands like this. There are any number of different ways to do this. But I can use the knee off the front side, like this. Okay, like that. And you can see, you get a lot of control on your opponent. Once you have the hands in position like this, it's easy to control the opponent, to take them down, or to pull them in. Also, you can push them back and use your elbow strikes at this point, going straight back into the knee, like this. Now, one other variation of the knee is to bring it around much like a hooking kick, in which we bring the knee up and across like this. Up and across like this. Again, let's pull you right over here, and you can see, once you have the hands in position, it's easy to control. The knee comes up and across, just like that. Up and across. Up and across. So, using our opponent with the focus pads on, we can actually control and move around and throw our knees around like this, or straight up, cross them over, straight up, forward, or back. Now, it's actually pretty rough on your opponent, on your partner, as you practice these techniques, but be sure and spend your time on the focus pads if you want to perfect your knee techniques. It's important to take your time with the focus pad training. Now, what we've demonstrated are just some of the fundamentals that you might pick up. Panther Productions, by the way, has a series of videotapes on the focus pad training by Manny Severio. I certainly recommend that. He's taken a lot of time to develop expertise and a lot of very intricate training methods for you. This time, let's look at the headbutt. Now, on the headbutt, we typically wouldn't get a heavy bag and practice it, and we certainly wouldn't do it on the focus pads. But in close, especially if we both have on headgear, we could actually train in some of these techniques. But I'm just going to demonstrate it. Ian, you come in for a second. At long range, the headbutt isn't going to work at all because I'll be in position where my opponent is going to hit me. But once I can move in and cover this, bridge this gap here, then I can control the person. Now, at this point, he's really out of the way for a headbutt. So I throw a knee or perhaps an elbow technique. If I happen to move in and he wasn't in so much of a karate stance, more of a straight stance, and I'm in position here, I can't actually throw the headbutt. Now, I don't want to throw the headbutt when his head is forward like that, because what's going to happen, I'm going to hit the top of his head. That's going to hurt me. So I've got to get that head back out of the way. Once I get the head back, then I'm going to take the forehead here, or the top of my head. The karate people usually incorporate the forehead, the boxers, the top of the head, and just smash it right into the opponent. So if I'm going to use the headbutt, I want to get that head back so that I make sure that I'm hitting all this soft tissue in here, and I'm not going to do any damage to myself. And then bam, I'm going to have a very powerful technique. If I happen to be on the corner like this, I can actually take the side of my head and smash into this soft tissue here, and that too is going to be a very effective technique for me. So if I want to incorporate the headbutt, I want to use as my first principle to get his head back. Now I can do that by just taking my shoulder, as a typical boxer does, and knock the head back. Give me a left lead, would you? Okay, so if I were in a boxing type of stance, I'd easily take this bicep or shoulder here, knock that head back, and then pow, I'm ready to throw that headbutt right in like that. If the head is forward, then I'm not going to be in a good position to throw a headbutt. At this point, I'm going to throw a knee, for example. I'm going to move him around. I'm going to throw an elbow. But if I can get that head back, then I can throw the headbutt in. Get the head back, then I'll throw the headbutt in. Now, again, the headbutt isn't something you need to spend a lot of time practicing, but it's very functional once you get the opponent into the trapping range. Certainly no discussion of HIE attacks would be complete without first looking at classical trapping routines, the Pak Sao, the Lop Sao, and such. Ian, come in for join second. Now, if I'm trying to hit my opponent, and that's what I'm going for here, and he doesn't block, I get in a straight attack. That's a simple direct attack. But if I try to hit him and he blocks it, now I have an obstruction up here that I have to clear. Our reference point is the arm being up like that. One way to approach that is to take my left hand in a slapping motion, a pak, and I slap it down. That clears the obstruction, so now I'm ready to hit my opponent. So that's what we call this HIA, the hand immobilization attack using the Pak Sao. I'm going to move in and hit just like that. It's very important to have the footwork to go along with the actual strike. I have to be stepping in as I'm moving the arm to hit with. And let me show that to the camera a few times here. Ian, if you'll step back for a minute. From our on-guard position, we have the footwork moving in like this. At the same time that I'm stepping in, I'm taking my left palm and I'm pushing against the forearm, right into the elbow, and I want to try to push that right into the ribs. If I just hit, then my opponent's able to come up around and hit me. So I've got to make sure that I take that palm and I stick it right in, and that allows me to strike right to my opponent's face. So once again, the technique works like this. And we call this, by the way, dramatization. Remember on an earlier tape we talked about lecture demonstration as being a low level of learning, and a second level would be dramatization. Anyone that performs a kata is doing dramatization. This is in effect the kata, the dramatization of the HIE attack called Pak Sao. I step out, 1, and hit 2. I step out, 1, and hit 2. Now you can also incorporate focus pads for this, but it's really better to have a partner come out. Ian? Okay, so once again, I start to hit. Here's the obstruction. His arm's in the way. Now I could attempt to go in a different direction and hit him. That'd be one way to do it. But what I'm going to try to do is just clear that obstruction. I'm going to take my palm and push against his body, and now I'm free to strike him at that point. Once more, I start here. This is my reference point. Pak Sao, and hit with the backhand. Pak Sao in the backhand. And remember, make sure the feet are moving in close for that. Now, once I have cleared that obstruction, I'm free to continue my strikes, to grab, to throw my knee, to stick the leg in like this, to turn the person around. I've established some control. So anytime you can get to that neck, there's your control factor. I can also use the fingertips striking in like that. It's a very fast and functional technique for HIE attack. Hand immobilization and then strike. Mobilize and then strike. Just like that. Okay. Now, in addition to the Pak Sao to strike, we might find that as we push against the person and we try that Pak Sao, we don't get anywhere. Too much energy, too much power. Okay, so one way to approach that, usually if the person is pushing that hard, really has a strong block out there and you can't Pak Sao, is to let that energy come into you, called a Lop Sao, like that. And now you're in perfect position to hit your opponent. So again, I tried to blast in and hit, but I wasn't able to, and I felt so much energy there. It just felt like I was hitting a statue, that I took that energy and pulled it in, and as I do that, I'm able to hit. Now, sometimes you can use your thumb around and get a good pull. Other times you'll just cup your hand like this as you're ready to hit. And let me show that right in the camera. So for the Lop Sao technique, we're actually hitting and pulling down. You're going to kind of cup your hands like this. That's the technique that you want to use for the Lop Sao. We hit and pull, and then we're going to go punch. So from our fighting position, we'll pull, and then we're ready to follow through with a punch. So we'll pull, and we can punch. And pull, and punch. And pull, and punch. All right, Ian, come back in. Let's look at that. So let's start with the reference point, the arms crossed here for the classical type of trapping. We just pulled down, and now we're wide open to hit with. Okay, so pull and hit, just like that. Pull and hit. Now you also have the force of his body and his energy. That's the reason you're pulling it, because he had too much energy and you couldn't stop it any other way. You're pulling him down, so you're taking that energy, and that is generating even more force as you're going into it. So this could be a very powerful technique for you. Lob sow down and hit. Lob sow down and hit. You can also put the pak sow, lob sow together. Here's the lob sow and hit, pak sow and hit. Lob sow hit, pak sow hit. Hit, hit, just like that. Pull and hit and pull and hit. Pull and hit, pull and hit, just like that. And that's what we call the lob sow. Now, let's say that we try for the lob sow, but here again, the energy isn't right. I pull. I can, if he pretty much stiffens up there on me, what I'm going to do is just bong in, take the elbow and twist around, just direct it out of the way. If he's pushing hard like this, push, it's not that difficult for me to move the arm either direction here. And I'm just deflecting it one way or the other. So as we're starting here, I'm just going to take that energy that I can't pock, I can't slap and move it out of the way. So I'm just going to take that energy that's coming at me and redirect it over out of the way. Once I do that, I can take my left hand, and that gives me a lop, a pulling motion, and boom, I've got my opponent, just like that. Okay, so I'm just going to take that arm and move it out of the way and hit. Take that hand and move it out of the way and strike. This is called a bong sound. Move the hand in and strike against my opponent. Move the hand in and strike against the opponent. Now this actually works even in boxing, where you'll take your elbow up and pull it out of the way against the opponent. To show you how to do that, Ian, if you'll step back for a minute, that way. As my opponent's coming at me, I'll have my reference point, the forearm. I just take my elbow and up. You want to try to maintain what we call sometimes the center line, okay? And twisting it over, and twisting it over. So you can actually rotate that hand in front of you like that, using that bong sound. So Ian, if you'll come back. So here I am at this point. I could lob sound hit, I could pak sound hit, or I could take that hand and turn it in and strike against my opponent once more. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is learn how to control that hand, and there are several ways to do that. But one method is the bong sound, which I twist it in and strike back against my opponent. Now if he were to throw a left lead, a left punch here, I still, if he's punching out, I can still take that bong sound and roll it over again, like that. Okay, so as I come in, I can move this one and hit, and as he punches, I'm just again using that elbow to redirect over. And in this case, I'm in a trapping position here so that I can counter and strike him. Okay, so once more, from this position, over and strike. As he punches a second time, I just redirect that elbow over out of the way, and boom, I've got him that easily. And that's what we call the bong sow in the classical trapping method. Now, sometimes the energy will be such that you won't have the opportunity to move in and bong sow, or maybe you don't want to move in on it. So you just use what we sometimes refer to as a running hand. The hand just goes over. You're again protecting your center line. This is important for that classical trapping because they're concerned about moving in and hitting straight in. As a boxer, we're also concerned about the hook. So center line is an important element, but it's not an end-all type of event there. So we're coming in and striking and then pulling down. If we wanted to do the jiao sao, we could come to what's called a jut sao, a little pull, and now we're in position to hit. But we're just running the hand out of the way. Just running the hand out of the way, and that's called a jiao sao. Let me do it for the camera. Ian, if you'll step over. We're in our on-guard position. The force comes in, and we just run inside of it, just like that. Now, sometimes you'll find your hand inside, and sometimes you'll find your hand outside. And that doesn't matter a whole lot. It just depends on what you're trying to accomplish. But as we're moving on the technique, we're just kind of coming up and over like that. Up and over like that. And in, if you'll come back. So we took that reference point, and we moved inside of it like this, and now we're in position to trap and hit. Okay, so just to review, basically I could use the slap called the pak sao, and hit. If there's too much power there and I can't do anything with my pak, I may choose to pull down, lob sao, and hit. And I may also take that same energy, instead of pulling it down, which puts me to the outside, I may direct it to the inside, which I'm using what we call the bong sao, the elbow technique. And still yet, without committing that inside, I can stay back and just run the hand to the inside, which now puts me in position to hit or to trap and hit. So I'm just taking that hand back. Now, as the person is punching, once you get that jiao sao, you're really in position to capture and take the hand out to focus with. And you can see why the classical HIA attacks are very functional for self-defense. In addition to the classical Wing Chun style of trapping, we also have trapping from other martial arts. Now, we don't typically think of karate as being a trapping type of art, but in fact there are several styles, such as Okinawan Goju, that spend considerable time using trapping in, trapping out methods. And in fact, they call that a redirection technique. And what we're doing is moving the hand and then following through. Ian, can I use you for this? As you punch out, I'm just going to go 1-2 like that. And see, that puts me right into position. I've, in effect, immobilized that arm by redirecting it out. And now I'm in position to follow through with the technique. Ian? We use that by coming over and back. In case you happen to watch The Karate Kid, this is called a wax on, wax off. And, in fact, a lot of karate techniques that use the middle block emphasize that type of routine here. So as the punch comes in, we take a little motion here, and then the right hand comes under, not unlike what we would call in classical martial arts an X block. A lot of people feel like you have to put your arms together to compose an X block, but that's only part of the actual technique. The technique is performed here. See? So if you were to take a picture of that, it would look like I was performing an X block. In fact, I'm only doing half of the actual rotation for the redirection. A common misunderstanding about typical karate techniques. 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2, and 1 and 2. So as the punch comes in, using this type of trapping technique, I'm just going to step and redirect over like that. Ian? So once again, as he punches, I go 1-2, and then I'm in position to hit him. And now, it doesn't matter as you punch slow. This left hand, I want you to punch here and hold your hand as tight as you can. Okay? Just even a little touch like that can move his hand. So if I can move his hand 3 inches on the first one and 3 inches on the second one, well, I've missed my head. See, and that's all I'm trying to do there. As he's punching, I'm trying to get the hand out of the way. It's advantageous to get those shoulders up and maybe prepare to move the body down low or out of the way. Or you can even step back to make sure that you don't get hit in the process. As he's punching, I'll go 1. Now, whether my hand goes in this position or turns over really doesn't matter. It might be that I'll pull my hand down and kind of hang on to him. Okay? This is also a traditional karate type of technique in which we pull and down like that. Okay? Now, sometimes my targets will be, of course, the head, or sometimes my targets will be right into the arm like that. Or sometimes, using this technique, I may just continue to pull down and follow through with a arm wrenching type of technique. But basically, I want to make sure that I understand that as he's punching, I can redirect over like that. And in order to make it useful, I have to be stepping in. Now, trapping and redirecting is to buy you time and distance. As he's punching, if I stand here, I've blocked the technique temporarily, but what's to stop him from pulling that hand back and hitting me a second time, which he can do. So if I'm going to take the time to try to trap and intercept, I want to buy myself time and distance. Here's the time. Okay, I now have the second or two, and I want to move in. That's the distance that I want. Once I'm in, then I can use any of the techniques that I want to. I can strike to the leg, I can strike to the groin, I can pull the person down, I can capture the head like that, I can strike, any of the techniques I want from whatever art. Once you have incorporated this interception, now is the time that you can take all the exclusive techniques from your art, because you're in a safe position. There's not a whole lot he can do from here. He can't really tackle you, can't really hit you. He's in an awkward position. And in fact, if we were ready to start the fight from this position, he's actually not in a very good position to be in. So by using this alternate form of trapping, this hand immobilization attack, which comes largely from the karate arts, I take the punch in, redirect it over, and now I'm in position for whatever I'd like to use there. And we call that an interception to redirection technique. In Jeet Kune Do, what we stress is any technique that works. It doesn't make any difference where it came from, because once you get into Jeet Kune Do, you chip it away, you redesign it until it fits your needs. In this case, we're again looking at that karate type of technique, but we're coming in. If you'll punch out, I'll come in, which puts me on the inside line to strike my opponent. Let me show you that to the camera here. Once again, we'd use that reference of wax on. Well, this is the wax off technique, if you will. As the punch comes in, we take the first hand and place it in. Here's our X block position again, redirecting and striking. As he punches in, 1, 2, 3. And 1, 2, and 3. And 1, 2, and 3. Now, I bring up this point about the X block because I suppose there's somewhat of an elitism in many martial arts systems. It's easy to put down the other technique, the other art from the other system, when in fact every system has something of value. Some people would look at an X block in a karate magazine and say, oh, that means nothing. But once you understand how that technique actually works, then you can figure out the importance of the technique. Let's not be too close-minded. Let's not be too quick to judge. But as we look at these techniques, you'll see how this otherwise traditional martial art, classical martial art, once it comes into the Jeet Kune Do matrix and gets turned around into necessity where we're doing the actual contact sparring, you can see how it's going to be very functional. Ian, come on in here. As he punches, I take the first technique and then move in and hit. So if I want to move into him, I just play it straight in like that. If I had an opponent with his hands up in a boxing type of position, I could easily move straight in like that for the technique. Okay? And what I'm doing here is going 1, up and under, and 2. As he comes in, I'm going 1, there's my X block right there, up and under, and 2. And 1, up and under, and 2. And I'm striking right here on the temple. Okay, so I would expect, if I threw a lot of power in that with body weight, I expect a knockout from that technique. So I move in, 1, 2, and hit. And 1, 2, and hit. Now, I can put those techniques together. Now watch this. If he punches out with the right hand, and I go 1, 2, punch out again, and I can redirect it. Now what happens if he were to punch out with the left hand? 1, 2, again, I'm ready to hit. So I just took that right punch and went inside. The left punch, I went inside, and now I'm in a terrific position to overpower my opponent. Sometimes when you're training, you may want to work on that. 1, 2. It's the right hand over, left hand under, redirect. Left hand makes contact, right hand under, redirect. Okay, to get both of those techniques down, as the person is punching in, right hand, left hand under, redirect. Left hand, right hand under, redirect. Right hand, now it doesn't matter whether your hand is like this or whatever. Right hand, left hand under, redirect. Now you're ready to strike. Left hand intercepts, right hand comes under, traps, that is temporarily immobilization, that's what we call trapping, and then strike. In. As he punches with the right, I'll go 1, 2, strike. As he punches with the left, I take my left hand 1, 2, and strike. So as he's punching, 1. As he's punching, 1 and 2, like that. So as he punches with the right, 1, punches with the left, 2, punches with the right, punches with the left, punches with the right, punches with the left, right, and left. Okay? And you can see how this method of exercise that we call otherwise a classical martial art is very functional for our trapping range. Anytime you're looking at fighting arts that deal largely with the hand techniques, you're looking at the potential for trapping. If you ever watch a boxing match, you'll see how efficient the boxers are in controlling the opponent's hands, not only in terms of blocking and hitting, but trapping and tying up those hands. Anytime you're tying up a hand, you're in effect hand immobilization attack. Immobilization is to tie up, to trap, to destruct. Ian, if you'll come in for a second. Give me a left lead. Okay, now typically this left hook that we're used to throwing can be used to immobilize. So see what I'm doing? I'm just reaching out and controlling that hand. The right hand, the right cross, again, can be used to pull down. So in effect, I can just really control my opponent from my boxing position. The boxing teaches us the footwork, the mobility to move in. It was the mobility that Bruce Lee was interested in when he looked at boxing. Boxing gives us that ability to move in. If you can move, you have that motion available to you, you can control the distance. If you practice an art that has blocking or trapping, but it's in a stationary position, I'm not sure that you've accomplished a lot. You need to take that next step and get it into a mobile stance. But once you have the mobility, you'll see that this temporary immobilization sets up any number of techniques. I can move in and hit my opponent. I want to constantly be denying access to my targets. Okay? In Wing Chun, we refer to the center line. In boxing, we're not so much concerned with the center line because the center line is actually moving. Let me show you what I mean by that. Here's my center line in the Wing Chun type of method. In terms of boxing, I'm continually moving that center line. Okay, see how the shoulders are dipping, see how the head will be moving. So I'm actually moving at all times the direction. Hence, you don't use that term center line in a typical boxing position because I've changed center line. I've moved it out of the way. I don't have to be concerned about protecting it because I'm moving it out of the way. That's my defense for it. I don't have to use my hands to stop techniques because I'm moving my center line out of position so my opponent can't get to it. Come back in here just a second. So once again, we can take any of our typical boxing type of techniques. Even an uppercut can be used to pull his hands up and hit. Especially if I'm in tight like this, I might take my left hand and bump his elbow up and then hit through. And then I'm in position to control my opponent using this routine. Now, I have referred to this inside boxing and trapping as trap boxing. I think that's an appropriate name for it. Because the fact is that a lot of the trapping, the classical trapping, you can't use as effectively in close with your opponent moving. Because if you have a person blasting in at you, perhaps the best defense is to move, to not be there, either getting too low or pivoting out of the position here. So as we're moving in, I'm using these boxing techniques to trap and hit, trap and hit. As he throws a jab, I can also use my hands to redirect and follow through to hit my opponent with that. Now, one other element of the trap boxing that should be brought out is typically in boxing position. If I see my opponent coming in, I'll trap a hand and then I'll go for the neck if I'm trying to close in and bridge the gap. If I move in and bridge the gap and move in on the opponent, then if he continues to throw that right arm, then I'm going to try to tie that up. If I tie it up, then he doesn't have a whole lot of other options other than to try to use this hand. If he tries to use this hand and I pull it, I can now get in position to where I've trapped both hands. At this point, I'm in a pretty good position here to continue hitting until my opponent submits. And I've trapped up both hands. Let me show that from a slightly different angle. I'll try it from this angle. As he hits, I move in and control. I'll control this hand, and then my left hand goes up under to hit with. Okay? You can see how my left hand is tied up in this position. Now, once I have this, the more he struggles, the more I'm able to control his fighting potential there. But basically, I'm thinking in terms of immobilizing him so that I can make him submit, or he may just drop out of it altogether. In this situation, I'll take that forward hand and control, but let's say that he continues to work with this hand, throwing a high punch at me. If I move in and I control and tie up, I can again continue to control. Now I'm going to control by moving my body, which gives him the only option of throwing that arm. When he throws that arm, I've got it controlled as well. Now, if you can see, both my hands are kind of tied like this. The more he works, the more tired he gets. I'm just kind of resting on him. I'll take one of my hands, typically my left hand, I'll push it up and control. And now that I have both hands controlled once more, I'm in a good position to continue hitting my opponent until he submits. Okay, until he submits, and then that's how we use what we call trap boxing. That's actually taking the boxing techniques to another step by incorporating the trapping. Now, the reason the boxers didn't pick up on that is because it's illegal to trap the hands in a boxing match. If you trap the hands, then the headbutt comes into play, and all these things are illegal in boxing, but it's exactly what we want here in this HIA position, hand immobilization, trapping distance. We want to be in close, want to be in position to use that headbutt, elbow, and knee strike techniques. In this next section that I'm going to go through, I'm going to show you some prearranged trapping routines. In the science of physical activity, we have a principle referred to as specificity of exercise. What we're referring to here is that if we have a technique that we want to make work, we have to be as exact as possible with it. In other words, some skills are really too complicated to actually pull off. Whenever we're doing prearranged sparring, it's very easy to put in very intricate skills that are going to be difficult to actually make work. For that reason, some of us involved in kickboxing prefer a simple punch, a simple kick. You know it's going to work for you. Nevertheless, I'm going to demonstrate for you some of the more intricate and advanced forms of trapping in what is called prearranged sparring. Ian, if you'll come out. Here we have a person punching out, and what I'm going to do is an interception, and then by moving in, I'm going to take the person down. Now, you can actually make this work if you're in close enough to your opponent and you use this clothesline technique. This has, again, from our Jeet Kune Do matrix, some of the elements of Aikido, some of the elements of a karate interception, some of the elements of a jiu-jitsu or judo takedown. But once it becomes Jeet Kune Do, it's no way is way. In other words, it may appear to be one style or another, but in Jeet Kune Do, we're not really concerned about the style or the technique. What is important in Jeet Kune Do is what works. As we perform this technique, as he punches, I'll come inside and then hit and take down like that. Now, I'm going to show you how it works, because it may be that from practicing this prearranged, this unrealistic type of approach to self-defense, you'll pick out certain elements that you'll get used to, and once you have those down, then when you get out in the actual sparring, perhaps you can see how to apply. But without the sparring, without the full contact, the fighting measure, it's going to be very difficult to pick up all these advanced techniques, these sophisticated methods, and then decide this is self-defense. This is a training method for self-defense. This is a step in the right direction, but don't simply take this and decide this is what's going to be functional. As he punches out, I step in. Remember, our trapping, our interception was to buy time and distance. Once I stepped in with his energy coming in, I'm then going to take my forearm up and my right leg across. As my forearm comes up, it's going to head right to the head, or in training, we'll go to the upper body and chest and take the person down to the floor. I don't need to kick up because this force is going to hit him. Turn around right here, Ian. Okay. As he comes in, I redirect. Now watch my right hand. If you'll take this hand down just for a second. As I step in, I'm hitting like that. Can you feel that? Now imagine if I'm throwing that up to his head. That's a pretty rough weapon to be hit with. So as he's coming in, I'm moving out of the way and then quickly throwing him over. It's important that I gain control here. If I have him in and I can't get his head to go back here, I can't throw him down. I can't get him down to the floor. It just won't work for me. However, if I have him in and I make that contact and hit, now he's back out of position, so it's going to be easy for me to sweep and take him down to the floor. Okay, Ian, if you'll step right over here for a second, I'll show it in the camera. Okay? In this case, as the punch comes in, I intercept, my right hand redirects, I'll take a short step with my left, my right foot will come around, as I hit, I sweep at the same time. Okay? So as he strikes in, I'll go 1, 2, and then strike and take him down. Once more, as he comes in, 1, 2, step and swing and take down. As the punch is coming in, it's 1, 2, and 3, and down. As the punch is coming in, 1, 2, and down, like that. A little bit faster this time as he's coming in, 1, 2, and 3, taking him down. And then in slow speed, and 1, and 2, and step, and take down. Now my left hand is in position to counter. My right hand is in position to counter. As I'm stepping in, remember I want to buy that time, so I'm stepping in. To do that, it makes no difference whether my hand is right or left, up or down, but I'm going to take him over like that. In, back in. Okay, so as the punch comes in, I go 1, 2, that takes me into position. Now I want to make sure that I'm in fairly close so that he doesn't have something he can hit me with, either a knee or a kick. I want to get right up on top of him. As my right leg comes around, my hand comes in like this, and at this point I could actually pull him in and control him from here. Okay, can you feel that? I mean, that's a good, strong technique for you. Tap. All right. As he comes in, I move up and I hit, but instead of holding on, I'm just going to take that force and knock him down to the floor like that. Okay? And to add to it, now we're on a concrete surface here, so I'm not going to expect you to go down. So I'm not going to control for that. But as you punch in, I'll move up like this, and if I want to, I'll take this right leg, and I'm not going to use this part at all. The right leg, the back of my thigh hitting, will drive him down to the floor. So once again, I use this trapping technique. This interception is my entry. And now, once I'm in, it's a combination of the hit and the strike, which is going to take my opponent down to the floor like that. So putting it all together, I enter, and then boom, hit him down to the floor. Once I get him down to the floor, well, the sky's the limit in terms of what you want to use. As he punches, I'm stepping in or redirecting. The left hand is coming back just for protection, really, just to hold on. If he had long hair, I could pull it. If he has a shirt, I can pull it. Again, at any point, I may want to pull that hand in and hit here to the carotid artery, like that. I may want to take this hand and pull back like that to wrench his neck. Once I have him off, all I have to do is drop down and go right to the floor for me. If he's struggling and I'm holding him, I can still hit like that. And I'm still in position to take my opponent down to the floor from here. Okay, good enough. A common disadvantage of these prearranged self-defense routines is that it's very hard to make them work in reality. The advantage to it is that you can self-discover different techniques that you would actually use. For example, we just had Ian come in. And I moved to this line. Now, let's say that my opponent was actually too strong, and once I moved in, I went for this hand technique, but it didn't work. Too strong for that. Okay, so what I could do is reverse my hand out and now take him down from this position. Let's try that. So as he comes in, I'm going to come across and try to hit. But when that one doesn't work, I'll switch right back and then take him down. Now, I've discovered, by accident really, that there's a little jiu-jitsu, little arm bend here. Can you feel that? Okay, I can take my left hand around and capture the neck entirely here for a little wrenching type of technique. Can you feel that? Okay, I could take my leg here and kick back and knock him down to the floor, or kick up under the groin like that. Okay, I can take my foot and stomp. I can take my hand and twist like that. All of these from this self-defense routine. Obviously, pulling back and dropping him to the floor would be one of the best things I can do. Let's see how that works. As my opponent, let me show this just in the screen first of all. As my opponent is coming in, I moved the technique 1 and 2 and 3. Now at this point, I've reversed my step, that switch step that we showed earlier, and came right over the top like that. Okay, once again, as my opponent comes in, 1, 2, I step forward and take him down. Once that doesn't work, I'll step back and reverse step like that. As my opponent comes in, I'll go 1, 2, attempt to take down. As it doesn't work, I'll step back and go through it. You can see how, over a period of years, a technique that was realistic, such as this, in which I tried to make the technique work, could be turned into a kata or dance, in which the proponents were actually over-dramatizing the techniques, so that what appeared to be a self-defense technique was now very flowery routine of techniques that don't actually apply. But in reality, we want to be simple and direct. Instead of making that wide turn across, we'll make it very simple, turn in and hit, reverse, and take the person down. In, if you'll come back in. Okay, so as he punches, I enter and try that technique. If that one doesn't work, and it's hard to believe that it wouldn't work because that hand is smashing him into the face. If this one doesn't work, I'll step back. Now this forearm can be blasted right into the face. That was a little hard right there, wasn't it? And it doesn't take much to get a cutting action there. Okay? Now, I probably would want to just take his space by pulling him over and taking him down to the floor. That'd be my first option. So as he comes in, I'll go through and then take him down to the floor from that. It might be that as he comes in and I try this technique, I'll decide, here's what I want to do. I might want to pull back and get some little pain right there. But in some cases, his arm might be bent, and I can't make that technique work. That's the disadvantage of prearranged sparring, is that you don't know that you're going to get the exact technique. So I have to be ready to place that elbow in, to pull back. Okay? So as he comes in, I drop it out of the way. I pull back. I'm hitting to take his head back out of the way and taking him down. Now, dropping him is the best option that you have. As he punches in, I'll redirect it. But this time, instead of dropping him, I'm going to take this left hand and go around his head. And already he's positioning because that's not a very pleasant motion. I'll place my knee in. I've got a nice little stretching technique here, which is good for pain, if that's what you're after. So as he's moving in, I'm trying to hit this technique, but it didn't work. So I simply stepped around and finished the last technique. As he's coming in, I tried to get this technique, but that didn't work. So I just took him down like that. All right. Just as we took the entries from the outside, we can also do the entries from the inside. Let me show you how that would look. In. As he throws out the punch, I'll go inside and hit. And now I'm just going to take that leg and sweep it out from under like that. Just to show you how that looks in the kata or the form style. As he moves in at me, I go inside, 1, 2, and now the right hand goes to strike with or to hit or to pull, and then the right leg sweeps like that. And once again, if we want to dress it up a little bit, we'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And as he steps, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. As he steps, I go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. But of course, in Jeet Kune Do, we would take out those flowery techniques and go just with the simple and direct technique. In. As he comes in, I go 1, 2, and hit. Now, this technique, actually I'm going to take that leg and kick. But as I kick, I'm going to take the foot and twist it back so that I get this takedown type of technique. So it's a combination of hooking the leg in and pushing back and down like that. Okay, so as he punches, I come in 1, 2, and hit. Now that alone is enough to stop the person. Because as I'm coming in to hit, I'm hitting and I've got my whole body coiled up here, ready to spring into him. Okay, and it's my form. I don't have to hit with any part of my hand. Anything that I hit here is going to give a lot of power. So I move in, I take this energy out and hit him. And now, just to add to it, I'll skip up just a little, and I'll take this leg and I'll take and sweep him down to the floor. As he punches, I come inside and hit and sweep him down to the floor like that. As he punches, I come inside and hit, and now sweep him down to the floor, making this circle like that. Once more, as he punches, I come in and hit and sweep him down to the floor like that. Now, once we've already entered from one position, if that doesn't work, we want to be in position to where we can continue through on this. So as the punch comes in, I'm going to enter and strike, and then come back and strike a second time. In. As the punch comes in, I enter and strike, and let's say that I didn't get the sweep that I wanted. It didn't work. So I'll just come back a second time and then hit. Now look what I have here. This forearm and elbow can be used to take the person down. But ultimately, if you'll zoom in on this leg right here, boom, there's my technique. That's what I was looking for right there. So as he comes in, I go 1, 2, 3, hit, and then back, and I'm taking his space. Okay? As he comes in, I go 1, 2, and hit. I'm taking my left knee and I'm stepping way up. I'm in effect taking his space, taking his position. I tried that hit, but it didn't work, so I step over top. Now this is what makes the technique work for me. By stepping over, I'm taking him off balance. I'm not simply trying to use my leg for this. I hit, I tried to sweep. I'm not just trying to hit him with the leg or step in and make that arm work. What I'm doing is taking my entire body, my whole body stepping in there to hit him. Okay, once again, he comes in, I hit, I attempt to sweep, didn't work. I take my whole body in and take him down. So as he comes in, I go 1, 2, and hit, didn't work. Take the whole body and follow through. Now, as I go in for the technique, I have any number of options available to me. I might just stop here with a strike. Okay? I may take the fingers and scrape out to the eyes, or hit back and strike again. Just continue striking if I want to. Okay? Once I have gained control over my opponent's position, I'm really in an advantageous position to where whatever I want. This is not a fighting position for him. He's in a position of inferiority. I'm in a position of superiority. I can do whatever I want to and probably get away with it. HIA, hand immobilization attack, or trapping, what we call sometimes trap boxing, is an important element of the Jeet Kune Do style of fighting. Now, at home, as you're watching the tape, be sure and practice and run through each of the drills, back and forth, taking the time to make them simple and direct. Make the drills to where something that you can actually use. Then get a partner. Have the partner come in very slow and easy the first few times, and then have them blast the attack in. But ultimately, you have to go to the third level, which is the hands-on techniques. You have to put on the gloves, you have to put on the headgear and the mouthpiece, get warmed up, and go full contact. In the next tape, we're going to begin our introduction to full contact sparring in the Jun Fan style.